Chapter 293. Jiang Pingji did not intend to show herself. Naturally, she would not let others discover her traces. She kept a sneer on her lips as she listened to the man and woman being lovey-dovey to each other. Due to the obstacles of reality, they had to go their separate ways and forget about each other. To be honest, a more active gossiper could write a short story about sadomasochistic love in minutes. Jiang Pingji lifted her eyelids. All kinds of sadomasochistic love stories had popped up in the streaming room. Some experienced players who were proficient in all kinds of romantic plots could accurately guess the conversation between Princess and Xianxia and Wuma Jun. They echoed each other. It was simply the trap. If it were not for the situation, Jiang Pingji would have laughed out loud. People who thought they were smart were always the stupidest. In a sense, the man and woman below were a perfect match. Jiang Pingji was happy to watch a good show, but the audience in the streaming room did not quite understand. Canteen Daffin Auntie, Granny, isn't Wuma Jun your sister's future husband? He's cheating on you in front of you. Don't you have any temper? I'm looking forward to your sister complex acting up and beating up Wuma Jun and his little mistress. Not only was the audience looking forward to it, but the entire audience in the streaming room was looking forward to it. They had long been accustomed to Jiang Pingji's unreasonable and protective style. Even if she was a concubine's sister, in ancient times, she would be the daughter of a concubine or an illegitimate daughter or a mistress in modern times. However, this was ancient times. Concubines' daughters also had human rights. It was justifiable. They did not think about how Jiang Pingji would fight for justice for the daughter born of a concubine. However, Wuma Jun was having sex with another woman in broad daylight before marrying her. He was a jerk. According to the streamer's temperament, she would definitely come forward and beat him up. Jiang Pingji smiled. After testing Lu Shi in Chongqing Alley, she had basically figured out the identity of the daughter born of a concubine in the manor. In other words, the daughter born of a concubine was not on the same side as the Lu family from the moment she was born. It was impossible for them to be on the same side in the future. As for sibling love, or brotherly love, there was no trace of it at all. Lu Shi had taken this into consideration. He had secretly instructed the second wife and Madame Dai to separate Lu Shi from the daughter born of a concubine. They had never interacted with each other before, so naturally, there was no relationship between them. Lu Shi knew that the mistress's daughter had an unusual identity and was most likely on the opposite side. Lu Shi intended to marry the mistress's daughter to Wuma Jun. It was obvious that he had dug a trap for the kid to jump into. Under such circumstances, Jiang Pingji still stood up for the mistress's daughter. She had nothing better to do. Host V, you want to mess with Wuma Jun and Xianxia? Heh, it was only a matter of time. The path that Jiang Pingji wanted to take, these two were stumbling blocks. Perhaps they were small gravel or pebbles. Sooner or later, she had to kick them away. However, the reason couldn't be to vent his anger for a concubine sister who had nothing to do with him. Obviously, the audience in the streaming room liked to join in the fun without using their brains. No one could tell that Jiang Pingji was playing with words. Princess and Xianxia watched Wuma Jun leave the rockery affectionately. She stayed where she was and carefully cleaned up her appearance. Then, she left with a normal expression. Jiang Pingji continued to sit there, unmoving like a mountain. After a few breaths, and Xianxia, who had already left, returned. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows. The princess, who was expected by the royal family of the northern borderline, was quite capable. And Xianxia didn't notice her, but she was very suspicious. She pretended to walk far away and quietly turned back to take a look. When Xianxia's aura was completely gone, Jiang Pingji jumped off the rockery with ease. The ventilation there was smooth. The aura left by the couple's mischief was so weak that it was almost undetectable. However, for Jiang Pingji, whose 5 senses were different from ordinary people, her nose was filled with a strange smell. She frowned slightly, and there was some disgust and contempt in her eyes. She slightly controlled her 5 senses, and the nauseating aura became much lighter. She took off another perfume pouch from her waist and sniffed it gently. Only then did she feel better. Wuma Jun and Xianxia left one after another. Jiang Pengji chose another winding path and left the rockery after making several turns. It was a special day. The garden, which was usually quiet, was more lively. Many noble ladies, who were gorgeously dressed and exquisitely dressed, were touring the garden together. Their eyebrows or foreheads were decorated with delicate red flower ornaments. The bright red color made the skin around them look even fairer and more delicate. The current atmosphere in Dongqing was not too closed. Although men and women touring together would be criticized, it was not a big deal. Therefore, apart from these noble ladies who were more beautiful than flowers, there were many young men in elegant clothes in the garden, beside the waterside pavilion, and in the gazebo. Out of tacit understanding, both parties were clearly separated. Even if they were familiar with each other, they would only look at each other from afar, separated by a small forest or a cluster of flowers. They would quickly look away. The evaluation day was not only related to the future of the noble son's officialdom, but it might also affect their marriage. Jiang Pengji was naturally a noble son, but she was still young. She was still young and small in stature, but her facial features were very distinctive. She was more feminine yet full of heroic spirit. After a few years, when she had completely grown up and gained some scholarly honors and fame, this was the image of a husband in the eyes of many aristocratic ladies. The most important thing was that she had to be handsome. It was not masculine, but a beauty that was mixed with the gentleness of a woman. It was best if her gender was indistinguishable. Not only that, her figure had to be tall and thin, her temperament had to be as gentle as jade, and she had to treat people gently. She had to be knowledgeable and talented. Avoiding the path that the noble ladies took, Jiang Pengji looked around and went to the octagonal pavilion that was on a higher ground. Standing there and looking into the distance, those with better eyesight could see the scholars who were participating in the evaluation. When she went over, there were already 3 unfamiliar men sitting in the octagonal pavilion. Jiang Pengji did not know them, so she just nodded politely. They did not mind Jiang Pengji coming over to disturb them. Instead, they smiled and turned their heads to continue chatting with their friends. The fallen petals were in profusion. The falling petals moved with the wind and covered the ground. Hundreds of scholars were scattered along the riverside and in the small forest. Graceful maids shuttled back and forth while carrying fine wine and delicacies. Occasionally, the sound of elegant music could be heard. Jiang Pengji and the audience in the streaming room were silent. Their expressions were subtle. How could this be called an examination? Oh no, this was an evaluation. Lao Ciji Lianmeng, I probably went to a fake school. Shaoxiang Huasher Si Lu Si, I probably met a group of fake teachers. Sen's Hisong Xianxia, I probably did a bunch of fake test papers. Bingtang Lemon Guiding, I probably entered a fake examination hall. Jiang Pengji, separated by such a distance, others could only see a blurry figure, but it was different for Jiang Pengji. She could see all kinds of people. At that moment, Wei Si's bun was slightly different. He raised his hand and touched it. A blooming beauty's sleep fell on top of his head. The beauty's sleep only bloomed in autumn and winter. The colder it was, the more beautiful it was when it bloomed. Its fragrance assailed one's nostrils. He looked at the flower and was slightly lost in thought. Not knowing what he was recalling, his expression became a little bitter. At that moment, he seemed to have sensed someone's gaze. He quietly looked over. Even though he could only see a blurry figure, how could he not recognize it? Chapter 294. Although Dongqing's aristocratic families were becoming more and more outrageous, it was undeniable that the children from those aristocratic families were indeed capable. There will always be talented people in every generation. Sigh, it's really one wave pushing the other. These young people are really amazing. They are all the pillars of the country. The deputy examiner beside Lu, she sighed with emotion. The other examiners echoed in unison. Why else would they say that they are young talents? The world today will soon be theirs. It's good to be young. In a few years, perhaps old bones like us will have to give up our positions to the more capable. Nowadays, these young juniors really make one envious. A great scholar spoke. His sideburns were white and his face was full of wrinkles. However, his skin was rosy and he was full of vigor. The triennial assessment was a very important day for Dongqing. Although Lu Shi was the general examiner, there were more than 10 deputy examiners beside him. They were either old ministers in the court, famous scholars, or learned scholars. Every one of them had more experience than Lu Shi. However, Lu Shi hated it when they took advantage of their seniority. Listening to the few of them sighing, he secretly clicked his tongue in his heart. Then he sneered coldly. Even a pig would have 2 hooves to walk when a large amount of resources was thrown at it, let alone a human. The other assessments were almost done one after another. The atmosphere was also heated up. Under the urging of a few deputy examiners, Lu Shi got up from the couch. Then he took out a scroll from his sleeve. 2 maids came forward and removed the seal on the scroll. They unfolded it and hung it on the shelf. Seeing that scroll, all the scholars had already perked up. The highlight of the day's assessment was coming. When they saw the big word on the scroll, they were all stunned. They either frowned in deep thought or secretly muttered, "People." That was the only word on the scroll. It was also the topic of the assessment this time. In layman's terms, it was a written essay with a topic. The examiner gave the topic and the students answered it freely. There was no limit to the number of words, the format of the content, and the theme of the article. As long as the topic was closely related to the people, be it governance of the people, farming, commodity trading, or education, it would not be considered as going off topic. It seemed simple, but in fact, it was very difficult to deal with. First of all, the topic was too broad. There were many things that could be written. Because of this, it was too difficult to write something that was brilliant, incisive, thought-provoking, or to be praised by Lu Shi. Most of the time, it was better to be neutral. Secondly, most of them were sons of aristocratic families with excellent family backgrounds. Although they did not talk about politics, they also did not have much contact with the common people. Most of what they knew came from books. If they were not careful, they could easily write false information. How could they enter the topic? To them, handing in the mission wasn't difficult. What was difficult was how to stand out and suppress the others. Of course, Jiang Pingji also saw the question. She frowned. Lu Shi's test question could be said to be easy, but it could also be said to be too difficult. It was indeed a bit tricky. Min, the characters follow the corpse and follow the clan. Corpse meant that the body was unable to move, and by extension, it meant that the body could not migrate or move. Sure meant country and clan. When the two were combined, it was the people. If one thought about it in a divergent way, Min could not only be interpreted as the common people, but also as the national economy and the people's livelihood. From the connection between the two, the basic necessities of life, food, housing, and transportation related to the people could all be included in the thinking. The national economy and the people's livelihood, such as reading and being rich in the country, could also be used as a starting point for the question. More importantly, after Lu Shi gave the question, he did not give any other hints. The students were also very confused. If they could know Lu Shi's inner bias, they would be able to think about the key points and cater to his preferences. Many of the scholars were in a difficult position. When the deputy examiners saw it, although they had objections in their hearts, they did not say it out loud. He cared about the people's livelihood, and he was pragmatic. What else could they say? Seeing the question, Wei Ci curled his lips slightly. He was very sure that there was something wrong with Lu Shi, but overall, he did not seem to be that annoying. The question had been given, and it was not convenient for the scholars to communicate and discuss. Many examiners were watching from above, so they could only rely on their own abilities. While the others were still thinking about Lu Shi's preferences, a few scholars had already started to grind the stones, lay the paper, and picked up their pens to write. Lu Shi's eyes swept around. Those who started writing were basically the candidates that he had expected. He could not help but secretly sigh in his heart. They had left their names in the annals of history based on their abilities. Naturally, there was a certain reason for that. There was no point in being envious or jealous of such talents. He walked around a little and swept his gaze across the few people's writing desks. He could not help but nod. The question that he gave was indeed very broad, but as long as it did not deviate from the people, it would basically not stray from the topic. Rather than being greedy and wanting to state countless contents in a short space of time, which would result in the essay being empty, it was better to seize a point and focus on explaining it. Of course, it was one thing to understand the principle, but it was another thing to be able to write something substantial. Some people had already understood Lu Shi's intentions, but when they started writing, they realized that they could not write anything substantial. Based on their analysis of Lu Shi, he could be considered a practical person. What was the use of exaggerating? He might even prefer those who knew about agriculture and water conservancy and were hardworking and capable. Of course, these people still had self-awareness. More people were disdainful. Everyone liked to listen to flattery. So what if the essay was beautifully written? As long as the general evaluation officer was comfortable reading it, it was fine. Therefore, there was no lack of fools who liked to show off their literary talent. Among the many scholars, Lu Shi cared the most about Master Yuanjing's few students and disciples. There was not much difference from what he had expected. Just from the content of the essay, he could actually feel out the temperament of these people. The only one that surprised him was Wei Ci. This fourth disciple of Master Yuanjing. It seemed that he was not like Min had said. He only had a good face. Cheng Jing was steady and practical. He paid attention to farming and water conservancy. Han Yu was righteous and open-minded. His essay was related to the criminal law. Lu Zheng seemed to conform to the norm, but when he went deep into his essay, he pointed out the current shortcomings of Dongqing and cried out for the people. But this Wei Ci, just by looking at his appearance, he was like a jade-like person. He was cold and had a bit of gentlemanly gentleness. He was strangely harmonious. However, his article was quite spicy and pungent. Even if Lu Shi admired his essay very much, he could not give him too high a score at this juncture. That was not the way to court death. This lad seemed to naively hope that all the people in the world could study. He gave a lot of practical suggestions and plans. The corner of Lu Shi's mouth twitched. He provoked the authority of the gentry at this time. Was he not afraid of being put in a difficult position? He sighed secretly. Wei Ci's deliberate act of looking for trouble was King ridiculous in Min's eyes. However, the troubling matter was not over yet. Jiang Pingji was in the pavilion watching many scholars immerse themselves in their essays. She felt slightly comfortable. That was the atmosphere of an examination. However, she changed her opinion very quickly. Hiss! The sound of cloth tearing rang out. Wei Ci was about to use the incense burner to dry the ink stains on the essay that he had written. A scholar near him was still deep in thought. His face was flushed and his expression was a little squinted. He kept tearing at his clothes. The clothes that the scholar was wearing were old clothes. They were worn loosely. Naturally, they could not withstand such torment. Soon, a big hole was torn. Wei Ci was speechless. Lu Shi heard the movement and turned his head. The Lang Jun had already taken off his clothes. He stood up from his seat with his back facing Lu Shi. Lu Shi was speechless. Chapter 295. The clothes slid down and piled up at the feet. Everything was exposed. Naturally, everything in front of the body could be seen. The filthy thing even had the tendency to raise its head. The passing maids could not help but scream when they saw it. The scholars who were alarmed by the scream turned their heads to look for the source of the movement. The deputy examiners who liked to flaunt their seniority also stopped chatting and looked up. All of a sudden, they felt like they were going blind. It was fine for the men. They had the parts that others had. So what if they saw it? At most, they would feel that it was an eyesore and spit at it for being immoral. However, the maids were different. They entered the royal palace. Strictly speaking, they were the emperor's women. Now that they saw the body of another strange man, and they were all virgins, they were suddenly frightened and screamed. It was already good of them to not be in a mess. Lu Shi's face was livid. When he saw the scholar's smug expression, he immediately guessed what was going on. The audience in the streaming room took advantage of the camera angle and zoomed in to see the situation of the assessment clearly. Just as they were picking and choosing and sucking up to all kinds of handsome men, the naked Lang Jun occupied most of the screen. White and plump breasts, slender waist, white and skinny legs that were a little blue. The audience in the streaming room, the sparse bullet screen instantly became turbulent, and the overwhelming number of words blocked the virtual screen. Lian Yizi Huaji, oh my god, my eyes are going blind. Zai Fengjin Bao Bao, it's too much. My mother was watching the streaming just now. Suddenly, a high-definition breasts appeared. Now she suspects that I'm watching something dirty. She's going to the balcony to hit me with a clothes hanger. Help! Inyang Zuanshang, I'm the one who's miserable. My wife is starting to doubt my sexual orientation. Apart from these complaints and ridicule, the others were all copied and pasted to protect their eyes. Jiang Pingji was almost dumbfounded. She had just listened to an action blockbuster on the rockery. Now she came to peek at the assessment and encountered someone tearing his clothes and wanting to run away. She must have seen a fake assessment. The panic over there also attracted the attention of many people. They all ran to the octagonal pavilion to secretly see what was going on. As the person involved and the culprit of everything, the scholar was not ashamed. Instead, he was proud. The embarrassment and panic of the maids around him greatly pleased him. He threw his head back and laughed, blushing. All living beings come naked, this is their nature. Why are you all so alarmed? Wei Ci snorted coldly and said harshly, children are young and don't know shame. Are you the same? Etiquette, justice, honor, shame, and trust have been cultivated to perfection. That person heard Wei Ci's sarcasm and turned his head to take a look. Wow, this was really amazing. He felt as if he heard the sound of his heart blossoming. It was incomparably wonderful. The scholar squinted his eyes and his footsteps floated as he approached Wei Ci with a chuckle. I really didn't know that in this mediocre world, there's actually such a heavenly beauty. When I saw you, Langdon, I felt as if I had known you before, as if you were an old friend from Mount Wu. You look very familiar, can we be like brothers? In layman's terms, it was, brother, I think we've had fun in our dreams before. Can we still go on a date? Nowadays, the Southern style was prevalent in Dongqing. There were many Qi brothers, and many scholars even regarded it as a fashion. However, there were still many straight men in the world. They were rather disgusted by such actions that went against yin and yang. Due to the orthodox public opinion of the harmony of yin and yang, although there were many sworn brothers, most of them would do it in secret. Very few of them would confess their love to another man in public, not to mention that after eating too much of the hanshi powder, one's brain would turn over and one's clothes would be taken off, one would flirt with someone of the same gender. Wei Ci's expression was completely unsightly. What did it mean to be an old friend from Mount Wu? Did he still want to be like brothers? The seats of all the scholars were fixed, so Master Yuanjing's students and disciples did not gather together. Hearing the commotion and seeing that Wei Ci was actually being teased by a libertine who had taken drugs, his face instantly darkened and he was very angry. Who would have thought that someone would be so daring to take hanshi powder at the assessment site? It was fine if he used it, but he was so excited that he forgot where he was. This was the place for assessment, not an ordinary gathering. Although he was angry, if Wei Ci was really offended and taken advantage of by this fellow, how would his reputation be in the future? Thinking of this, a few scholars from Langyi Academy went forward to stop him. However, they were quite far away from him. The scholar who was high was only 3 to 4 steps away from Wei Ci. Comparing them, it was obvious who would be the first to seduce Wei Ci. Lu Shi was so angry that his eyes were filled with murderous intent. He clenched his teeth and said, "Guards, take this person away." In order not to disturb the scholar's assessment, the guards who were an eyesore were all waiting outside. It would take some time for them to come in. Wei Ci restrained the anger on his face. His gaze was cold as if he was looking at a dead person. With a cold face, he stood up, picked up the writing table with both hands and swung it directly at the scholar. He did it in one go. Everyone was speechless. Wei Ci looked down and said, "Immortal." His hand was still holding onto the writing table. "No, It should be said that half of the writing table and the other half was hanging on the scholar's face. Looking at the broken writing table, then looking at the scholar's face that was covered in blood, many people secretly shuddered. If the writing table had been smashed on their faces, wouldn't their faces be flattened so that even their parents wouldn't be able to recognize them? Wei Si's fingernails were neatly trimmed, but because he used too much force, his fingertips were pale. His fingers used force and his knuckles were distinct. The veins on the back of his hands were bulging. It was obvious that his heart was not as calm as he looked. At this moment, the guards rushed over. Wei Si raised his head and glanced at Lu Shi and the scholars. He bowed with a calm expression, pursed his lips and left with a wave of his sleeves. He was very clear that there was no need for him to stay. Even if there was a reason for hitting someone during the assessment, it was very likely that he would be disqualified. Rather than continuing to stay and becoming a laughingstock, it was better to leave quickly to avoid being bullied and humiliated. Lu Shi bent over to pick up Wei Si's answer paper. Because the ink had not completely dried and the ink on the inkstone on the writing table had spilled, a lot of the content was dyed black. Lu Shi shook the paper and took the incense burner to dry the ink. TSK, what a pity. Lu Shi pointed at the scholar coldly. Drag this disgraceful person away. Wei Si was at least high-spirited and took the initiative to leave. However, the scholar who made a mistake and caused trouble was personally ordered by Lu Shi to drag him away. Comparing the two, no one would be bothered about Wei Si injuring someone. They would only feel pity that the child was unlucky. This was only one of the reasons. More importantly, Lu Shi's action had almost negated everything about the scholar. His scholarly reputation was completely ruined. After being hit in the face with the writing table, the intense pain caused the scholar's light-headed head to return to the human world from heaven. There was still a pleasant aftertaste in his body. However, when he saw everything around him clearly and the cold wind blew, he realized that he was naked and almost fainted. Chapter 296. His brain had cooled down and he no longer had that unruly drive. It was late autumn and when the wind blew, he felt a chill all over his body. His legs were trembling and his legs were trembling. He was afraid. Lu Shi saw the change in his expression and sneered coldly. The evaluation is related to the country and the future of Dongqing. It is such a serious and sacred matter and someone took off his clothes and ran around in public without any sense of shame. He has learned all the words of a saint. It is really an eye-opener. The scholars were as quiet as chickens. The frightened maids knelt on the ground and trembled. Seeing that the guards did not take action, Lu Shi said in a calm tone, "Drag him away. Do you really not understand human language?" A few deputy examiners were about to plead for mercy. Although they also felt that the scholar had gone overboard, consuming hanshi powder had become a trend in the upper class of Dongqing. It was an elegant matter. Even if the reaction was over the top, it was because the powder was not used properly. This kind of matter was not a special case and should be dealt with according to the circumstances. Muddle-headed. Before they could speak, Lu Shi had already scolded. Although he did not mention names, how could those old foxes not know that he was scolding them? Instantly, their expressions were as colorful as a palette of colors. The guards lowered their heads, but in the end, they still dragged the man away. Lu Shi's face was cold. He smoked and dried Wei Si's examination paper and folded it into his sleeve. The audience in the streaming room could not hear what Lu Shi scolded, but looking at his expression, they knew that the streamer's father was really angry. More importantly, no matter how one looked at it, that scholar's actions seemed like he was high on drugs. Librarian, that's strange. Why do I feel that there is something wrong with the scholar's behavior just now? Daming Iguan, it's not just not right, he was basically drugged. What's the difference between this and taking off one's clothes in the examination hall with the intention of touching or molesting another student? No matter who you are, you must be thrown out. I don't know if I have seen too many court intrigues, but I feel that this matter is not that simple. Maybe this student was plotted against. In an instant he thought of a court intrigue. Lao Cg Lianmeng, I think he ate too much hanshi powder. How is this a plot? Earth's most handsome man, hanshi powder? What was that? Lao Cg Lianmeng. Hanshi powder, also known as 5 stones powder, is a type of poison that can cause addiction and hallucinations. After consumption, the poison will spread and the body will develop a huge internal heat. Long-term consumption will result in chronic poisoning. But the ancients believed that after the consumption of Hanshi powder, it would have the effect of clearing one's mind, and it would be as if the gods were helping one to compose poems. It was probably because of this that the naughty brat took the pill during the assessment. Nougat? Isn't this poison? Jiang Pingji could not help but raise her eyebrows when she saw the contents of the bullet screen. She knew about it. Hanshi powder was a popular luxury item among the aristocrats of Dongqing. In Lu Shi's memory, he had seen many scholars in Hejian County drinking Hanshi powder to liven things up during gatherings. Another member of the audience searched for the information of Hanshi powder on Baidu and copied and pasted a whole bunch of information, which could be considered as a form of education for those who didn't know about it. Lao Cg Lianmeng. Hanshi powder is addictive, but from a certain aspect, it is scarier than drugs. Jiang Pengji glanced at it and put it down disinterestedly. The audience in the streaming room belonged to the modern era. To them, Hanshi powder was still very scary. However, Jiang Pengji grew up in the interstellar era where technology was highly advanced. The various kinds of drugs that were once feared by people, in her eyes, were not qualified to enter her sights. Bing Tang Ningmeng, that's scary. If one accidentally becomes addicted to this thing, wouldn't he be crippled? It wasn't easy to get rid of drugs in the ancient era. Think about our Chinese country, think about opium. If this thing were to be widely spread, the consequences would be unthinkable. This bullet screen gained the support of many viewers. Host V, there's no need to be so worried, Hanshi powder can only be spread in a small area. This thing is very expensive, ordinary people can't afford to use it, which prevents the possibility of it being spread widely. After consuming Hanshi powder, one still needs to go through a very complicated process to disperse the excess internal heat in the body. If there's a mistake during the dispersion, it could lead to death. The people can't afford it. Even so, the harm of Hanshi powder can't be ignored. In the current ancient era, the upper-class society is in low spirits, the atmosphere of society will also be led astray, the unlucky ones are the lower-class people. Jiang Pengji looked at the scholars participating in the assessment, her brows slightly furrowed, she suddenly lost interest to continue watching. Hanshi powder indeed couldn't enter her eyes, because based on the physical qualities of humans in the future, it's basically impossible to use Hanshi powder to cause people to become addicted. But the people in the ancient era were different, they were too weak, those aristocrats who were spoiled since young were even weaker. Once one becomes addicted, it would be difficult to quit, probably no one has the willpower to quit. The noble scholars, they have the money to buy Hanshi powder, they will be fine as long as they continue to consume it, why would they go through hardships to quit? In the current pyramid society, where illiterates are everywhere, the influence of the elites on the lower class is too big, the decadence of the elites will cause the whole world to be decadent, they are useless, it will also cause the atmosphere of the whole society to be foul. She pursed her lips into a straight line, she didn't alert anyone, she quietly left the octagonal pavilion. After such an episode, Lu Shi didn't have the mood to host the assessment. He waited for all the scholars to finish answering their questions, he ordered people to collect all the papers of the scholars. For the sake of fairness, the names of the scholars were all covered with white cloths, they will be assessed slowly. Han Yu's face was full of worry. Zixiao, this time, isn't it too much of a loss? Why did he encounter such an unlucky thing? He didn't look at the almanac when he went out? Lu Jing said, Zixiao is always meticulous, I hope this incident won't bring too much of a blow to him. Their master, Master Yuanjing, was not surprised at all that Wei Ci left the assessment halfway. Instead he smiled calmly, I know about this, you don't have to worry too much, Zixiao already has a plan. Wei Ci never thought of serving Dongqing, what meaning does the assessment result have to him? If it wasn't for Master Yuanjing's request, Wei Ci wouldn't be there today. Jiang Pengji walked back and coincidentally met Feng Jin, who came out to look for her. This is an important place for the royal family, didn't I tell you not to wander around? Feng Jin looked her up and down. He was secretly relieved to make sure that there was nothing unusual about her. She didn't seem to have caused any trouble. I just wanted to watch the assessment from afar. There are people around. If I did something wrong, I can't be the only one to be in trouble. Jiang Pingji glanced at the other scholars and noble ladies, indicating to Feng Jin that she was innocent. I'm afraid that you don't know the rules here, right? It was not easy for him to take care of a naughty child, an injured person. Don't be fooled by the beauty of the royal garden. Who knows what demons and monsters are hiding in the dark? If you accidentally ruin someone's plan, you might lose your head. Jiang Pingji walked to Feng Jin's side. They walked side by side on the narrow path. They were quite a distance away from the others. It seems that you are very experienced. I just found Wuma Jun and a girl named Xianxia in the rockery cave. TSK. It was intense. Is this a big deal? Chapter 297. Xianxia. This name doesn't belong to a woman from Dongqing at all. Is she from a different tribe? Feng Jin's expression changed, and an ominous premonition flashed in his heart. Jiang Pingji raised her hand and pointed to the north. She smiled meaningfully. Feng Jin understood, but he was not happy that he had guessed the other party's identity. Instead, his face turned pale. The decree of marriage has been issued. She's the fourth sister-in-law of His Highness. How dare Wuma Jun, brother-in-law and sister-in-law, are having an affair? Does Wuma Jun know what he's doing? Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes contemptuously. Wuma Jun is carrying forward the virtues passed down from his ancestors. Besides, Xianxia has ill intentions after marrying into the royal family. She seduced Wuma Jun, and he has his own plans. Won't they be together? According to Wuma Jun's ambition, even if Xianxia did not seduce him on purpose, would he be able to protect his belt? Neither of them were good people. Feng Jin hesitated and did not move forward. His heart was full of struggle. This matter, Jiang Pingji said in a low voice. Why are you so worried about the scandal of the royal family? Your father has retired from his official post and is waiting for the situation to change. Do you still want to risk your life for Dongqing? Even if you say that Xianxia and Wuma Jun are having an affair, what evidence can you show? The marriage between the northern borderline and Dongqing is already set in stone. Any obstacles in between will be eradicated. After listening to her, his expression kept changing. After a long time, he let out a long sigh. Forget it. This matter indeed has nothing to do with me. Feng Jin was very clear about Wuma Jun's ambition. Feng Jin could more or less guess his purpose of seducing the princess of the northern borderline, Xianxia. However, that person was only ambitious but had no brains. He did not see the big picture. That was what Feng Jin despised the most about Wuma Jun. Getting in touch with the royal family of the northern borderline through Xianxia was tantamount to asking a tiger for its skin. He would be bitten to death. Jiang Pingji tilted her head and looked at Feng Jin's side profile. She said, "This matter has nothing to do with you. Let me tell you something that is related to you." Feng Jin's heart skipped a beat. He asked her without changing his expression. "What is it?" Jiang Pingji said, "During the assessment just now, a scholar consumed hanshi powder and took off all his clothes in front of everyone. Yes, you didn't hear wrongly. He stripped naked in front of all the scholars, my father, and the other deputy examiners. He even flirted with Master Yuanjing's disciple, Wei Zixiao." Feng Jin was stunned. His eyes widened involuntarily. This is simply absurd. Jiang Pingji told Feng Jin about it as a joke and teased him. "You should be glad that you didn't go for the assessment because of your arm injury. Otherwise, perhaps the one that libertine has his eyes on would be your beauty, Feng Huaiyu." Why did he feel like his hands were itching to beat the brat in front of him? Jiang Pingji burst into laughter. Her eyes were filled with a relaxed smile. "Forget it. Since you're so honest, I'll stop teasing you." Feng Jin's expression was stiff. He looked a little angry, but Jiang Pingji smiled from the bottom of her heart. The two of them walked through the veranda and looked from afar. They seemed to be chatting and laughing. When they were about to leave the garden, Jiang Pingji noticed a strange gaze. She subconsciously stopped smiling and looked at the source of the gaze. In her line of sight, there was only a disappearing piece of cloth. Did you see someone you know? Feng Jin asked her. Sort of, but he's very guarded against me. I don't know how I offended him. Jiang Pingji shook her head. If Wei Ci liked to avoid her, then so be it. She wanted to see how long he could keep his secret. Huaiyu, how much do you know about Langya County? Feng Jin retracted his gaze and looked in the direction where Jiang Pingji was looking at. He didn't see anyone. Langya County? I forgot that you're going to Langya with Master Yuan Jing to study. It's better to be prepared. You should do your homework and understand the situation of the aristocratic families in Langya. Feng Jin smiled. He thought Jiang Pingji was worried about studying in the future. Langya County is a place where military strategists fight for it. It's also a place full of spiritual energy and nurtures many outstanding talents. It's a place where aristocratic families gather. Jiang Pingji nodded. She knew all that. I heard that there are many aristocratic families in Langya County. They're not to be trifled with. Hejian County was rich in beauties, while Langya County was rich in scholars and heroes. Many famous scholars were basically from Langya. The two were completely different in Dongqing. Feng Jin comforted Jiang Pingji. They're indeed not to be trifled with. But as long as you know your place, no one will deliberately make things difficult for you for the sake of Lu County Chief. Moreover, when you enter Langya Academy, Master Yuan Jing will protect you. What are you afraid of? As long as the friend beside her didn't make a fuss, she would definitely have a good life in Langya County. Jiang Pingji asked again, Then, have you heard of the Wei family of Langya? Feng Jin listened and frowned. He rummaged in his mind for a long time. The Wei family of Langya? I have some impression of it. If I remember correctly, the branch of the Wei family of Langya is a branch that branched off from the Wei family of Bianzhou not long after the founding of the Xia dynasty. But this branch has been declining for a long time. It's getting worse with each generation. Bianzhou was located in Zhongzhou. The Wei family of Bianzhou was considered a first-class aristocratic family in Zhongzhou. Do you know the current situation of the Wei family of Langya? Jiang Pingji asked. I vaguely heard that the branch of the Wei family of Langya has returned to the Wei family of Bianzhou and returned to the main clan. Although it's said to be returning, it's actually just living under someone else's roof. But if they don't do that, they may completely fall from grace and become a commoner. The most important part of the assessment was family background. It took up a lot of points. Commoner families could only be inferior. If they returned to the main clan, they could enjoy the shade under a big tree. After all, they were an ancestor. Regardless of how they lived, at least they would be a well-known aristocratic family and not a commoner family. Jiang Pingji frowned and said, Huaiyu, do you mean that the Wei family of Langya has moved back to Zhongzhou? If that was the case, Wei Ci shouldn't be from the Wei family of Langya. Was it just a coincidence of the surname? It should be. Feng Jin shook his head and said with pity, It's impossible for the branch to return to the main clan under normal circumstances. The Wei family of Langya made such a choice because they were at the end of their rope. They had no choice but to do so. Why is Lanting interested in this? She shook her head and said, It's nothing. I'm just asking out of curiosity. The two of them talked as they walked. When they returned to the banquet, they watched the singing and dancing for a while. Jiang Pingji saw someone taking hanshi powder in public not far away. His expression was one of enjoyment. She was startled and suddenly thought of something. Huaiyu, do you know when hanshi powder became popular in Dongqing? Chapter 298. Isn't there an approximate time? Jiang Pingji had some guesses in her heart, but she didn't have any concrete evidence. She had read so many books before, and there were indeed some records about hanshi powder. According to unofficial historical records, in the previous dynasty, there was a wandering necromancer who presented a magical prescription to the emperor of the Xia kingdom that could extend one's lifespan and strengthen one's body. It could allow a man to have sufficient yang energy and be vigorous in bed. That prescription was hanshi powder, and it had the effect of treating typhoid. Before the 5 kingdoms separated into Xia, this Hanshi powder had always been a secret prescription of the palace. It wasn't leaked to the public, and only the emperor could enjoy it. Later on, when the 5 kingdoms separated into Xia, the Hanshi powder that was once regarded as a god disappeared without a trace. When it reappeared, it became a popular trend pursued by the nobles. Feng Jin frowned and shook his head, saying, "I'm not sure about this. If Lanting is curious, I'll go back and check it out for you." Jiang Pengji nodded, "Then I'll have to trouble you." Feng Jin turned his head and thought about it. He felt that Jiang Pengji's sudden questions were a little weird. What's the problem with this Hanshi powder?" Jiang Pengji sneered, "The problem is huge. Take a look, those who have been consuming Hanshi powder for a long time, which one of them still has energy? They are muddle-headed all day, as if they are going to meet their ancestors at any time. They don't have the heart to do proper work, and their actions are absurd. Their temperament is even more unpredictable. Now, after consuming Hanshi powder, they still strip in public. Under normal circumstances, who would strip naked and expose their body to outsiders? Feng Jin had always heard about how good Hanshi powder was, and how comfortable it was after consuming it, but he had never touched it. If he were to indulge in Hanshi powder like those idle playboys, not to mention anything else, his father Feng Run would be the first to not let him off. Hearing Jiang Pengji's reminder, he came back to his senses and vaguely understood something. Hanshi powder is addictive," Jiang Pengji said with a cold face. She did not care about such outdated things, but the physical qualities of the people in ancient times were too poor. The possibility of addiction was high. If you take it for a long time and want to quit, the process is extremely painful. Ordinary people can't bear it. Feng Jin's expression turned a little strange. But this Hanshi powder is mostly used by nobles. The common people will not be implicated," Jiang Pengji sneered. "Look at what you're saying. It's as if the people at the helm are the people." Feng Jin was speechless. After a while, he said, "Jin will investigate this matter when I get back." Jiang Pengji lowered her eyes. She wasn't sure if the Hanshi powder was a conspiracy, but she was sure that this thing was like a catalyst, which stimulated the original hidden danger. After leaving the royal courtyard, she sat alone in the carriage, her face cold as she flipped through the information about Hanshi powder that the viewers in the live streaming room had found. It was almost the same as what she saw in the unofficial history. In the dimension of the viewers in the live streaming room, Hanshi powder was initially used to treat typhoid. But because of some people who were courting death, they changed the prescription, causing the medicine to become poisonous. It was spread to the aristocrats and became a popular consumption trend. In the current dimension, Hanshi powder was presented to the emperor by the wandering necromancers as a good prescription for health, but the emperor of Xia used it wantonly. After the 5 countries divided into Xia, the secret prescription of Hanshi powder was also spread to the hands of a certain country. This harmful thing? Jiang Pengji couldn't help but shake her head. Back at the Feng residence, Takshu had already prepared hot soup and clean clothes. Jiang Pengji went to take a bath. Her long hair was still wet. Takshu used a dry cloth to wipe her hair and absorb the water. Xiaoyu, help me get the Great Universal Geographical Map. Jiang Pengji unfolded the Great Universal Geographical Map. The contents on it were personally copied by her. There were many small words on it. Her long hair was almost dry. Jiang Pengji let Takshu leave and said to Su Ku, "Father is probably going to retire." Su Ku was shocked after hearing that. He couldn't help but raise his head to look at her. Master is going to retire? How old was Lu Shi? He wasn't even 40 yet. He had just passed 30 years of age. Why was he thinking of retiring? Hu County is a hot potato. If it wasn't for father's strong hand, how could he have defended it until now? Jiang Pengji's eyes flashed with coldness. The 2 prefectures near Hu County had a food shortage. Who wouldn't be jealous if they managed to survive with just Hu County? Not only will the aristocrats be jealous, but the emperor is even more jealous. I think he's going to cause trouble. Father already had the intention to retire before he came to Shangjing. I think this matter is going to end like this. Su Ku frowned and said softly, "But if Master loses Hu County, he won't be able to rest easy without someone to rely on. After all, although Lu Shi didn't kill all the aristocrats in Hu County, he offended a lot of them." Our Jiang Pingji said, "That depends on how you choose. Hu County's terrain is easy to attack and difficult to defend. Moreover, the military is weak. If it's Dongqing, this place will definitely become a fat piece of meat that everyone covets." What's the difference between this and a toddler carrying gold in a busy market? Rather than having food in your hands and not being able to protect it, it's better to give it up temporarily and move to another place as soon as possible. After hearing that, Su Ku was silent for a while and said, "I think that if you submit a memorial to retire, you will most likely be promoted to a prefecture magistrate. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Hu County was already a big county that produced food. It was the best piece of land in the whole of Dongqing. Lu Shi had spent several years to manage the county to this state. If he retired now, people would only think that the emperor was too greedy." In order to stop people from gossiping, if Lu Shi said he wanted to retire, he would most likely be appointed as a prefecture magistrate to show the emperor's benevolence. Although it was a demotion, it was better to have a good reputation. I think so too. Currently, there are 6 prefectures and 21 counties in Dongqing. Only Yuanzhou is still lacking a prefecture magistrate. When he heard Yuanzhou, Su Ku's face suddenly turned cold. But this place in Yuanzhou was located to the north of Dongqing and bordered the northern borderline. There were 2 counties, Shangyu County and Changhe County. Qiguan Rang was from Shangyu County. The 6 cities that were lost were all in Shangyu County. Now, there were still 3 cities in the hands of the northern borderline. That was not all. Due to the many years of war between the northern borderline and Dongqing, Yuanzhou was already in a mess and the population was low. Now that Dongqing and the northern borderline were connected by marriage and Nanxing came to borrow troops, according to the emperor's idiotic character, he might transfer the troops guarding the border. When that time came, Yuanzhou would have to face the covetous eyes of the 3 tribes of the northern borderline. It was not easy to be the prefecture magistrate of Yuanzhou. However, it was precisely because it was not easy that Lu Shi went to Yuanzhou to seek the greatest benefits. Jiang Pingji had also been eyeing this place at first. Only in Yuanzhou can he openly recruit soldiers and buy horses. After all, even if the 2 countries are connected by marriage, the 3 cities of Shangyu County are still in the hands of the northern borderline. "The land is indispensable," Jiang Pingji said. Su Ku listened carefully. Yuanzhou has another important advantage. She wrote 4 words. The aristocrats are scarce. The aristocrats are scarce, which means that they will be subject to fewer restrictions and constraints. Su Ku thought about it seriously and faintly understood Jiang Pingji's choice. Yuanzhou seemed to be in danger, but it was actually a great opportunity. Yuanzhou and Hu County share a border. Father has been operating in Hu County for so many years, so he must have a backup plan. The county chief sent by the imperial court will not be able to control the entire Hu County in a short period of time. In other words, Hu County is still secretly in father's hands. Yuanzhou's soldiers and Hu County's provisions. The combination of the 2 was what Jiang Pingji wanted. Apart from that, there is another important reason. Chongzhou is rich in sandalwood. Chapter 299. Su Ku was stunned for a moment. He did not understand the connection between Chongzhou's abundance of red sandalwood and her preference for Chongzhou. Don't underestimate this Bai Tan. Jiang Pingji smiled and revealed a hint of gentleness. In the beginning, my goal was not Chongzhou. But because of this Bai Tan, I changed my mind. If father is appointed as the magistrate of Chongzhou, many plans can be started. Jiang Pingji wanted to disrupt the current system of passing on knowledge. The first problem was not facing the censure of the aristocratic families, but the carrier of the books. Our bamboo slips were heavy and the cost was high. Therefore, even if a family of a few people worked for a lifetime, they would not be able to support a scholar. Although bamboo paper was good, it had some shortcomings. The annual output of the paper workshop was limited. Apart from the need to control the output due to its rarity, the other reason was the limited raw materials. The forest in Hejian County was dense, but there were very few bamboo forests. The quality of the bamboo would also affect the quality of the bamboo paper. Taking the means of transportation in ancient times as an example, in order to save as much money as possible, the production materials had to be sourced locally. Therefore, most of the bamboo paper produced by the paper workshop was sold to various aristocratic families. The other portion was used for their own use. The scale of production had never been expanded. Jiang Pingji's ambition was not limited to this. The output of bamboo paper could not satisfy her needs. Naturally, she had to find another way. Jiang Pingji searched through all kinds of wood and found the wood that was the closest to the green sandalwood tree. The audience in the streaming room said that they used rice paper in ancient times, and one of the raw materials for rice paper was the green sandalwood tree. Red sandalwood has a hard and dense texture. It is tough and resistant to wear and tear. It can be made into sturdy and durable farming tools, furniture, and axles. Its stem, bark, and branches are even more useful, Jiang Pingji said in a low voice. She wrote a word on the table with her finger. Paper. Su Ku understood, and his eyes seemed to light up a few degrees. Really? Jiang Pingji nodded. The paper workshop's technology for making bamboo paper was very mature. Even if they changed the raw materials, they could make new paper after some experimentation. The raw materials were cheap, and with the support of mature technology, this meant that the cost of the new paper would be much lower, at least cheaper than it was now. Su Ku rubbed his hands together in agitation. Once he thought about how he could buy a lot of bamboo paper at a low price, his heart trembled. But if Chongzhou accidentally falls into the hands of others, then wouldn't my plan be? Jiang Pingji said. Therefore, I still need to inform my father about this matter. Try to think of a way to operate it and take over Chongzhou openly. Based on the current situation, it would not be difficult to take down Chongzhou. What he was afraid of was an accident along the way. I do need to discuss this matter with Master. Su Ku secretly took a few deep breaths to suppress the excitement in his heart. Coming from a commoner's family, no one knew better than him how hard it was to learn to read and write. If it wasn't for the fact that his teacher was a good person and took pity on Su Ku's talent, he wouldn't have been able to study at all. If the Langjun in front of him could really accomplish such a magnificent feat, he, Su Ku, would be willing to be his slave for the rest of his life. Also, there's one more thing. Jiang Pingji lowered her eyelids, stood up, and took out a dark green box from a book box. There were a few stacks of paper in it. They were all drawn by Jiang Pingji herself. She unfolded them and placed them in front of Su Ku. Take a look at this. What do you think? Su Ku did not understand. He opened it up and read it carefully. He was a little confused and did not understand what it meant. However, the audience in the streaming room understood. Paper was not enough. Copying books by hand was too exhausting, so printing was a must. Librarian, is the streamer going to use printing in secret? Movable type printing or engraving printing? Lao CG Lianming, of course it's movable type printing. But engraving printing is better than movable type printing in certain situations. Ardine Kumo Wang, I'm disappointed. I wanted to see if the streamer could create a printing machine or something. I didn't expect it to be printing. Artsiong Dafin Anti, TSK, a tall building starts from the ground. No matter how good the streamer is, she's just one person. The technology in that world is just like that. According to Dain Kumo Wang, you should be complaining about why the streamer doesn't build a space carrier. Paper and printing. Jiang Pingji had thought about these two things a long time ago. She had a workshop to make bamboo paper. The technology was ready-made, so she only needed to think about how to save money and choose the right raw materials. RAS for printing? She only knew about printing machines. That thing was an extremely old antique in her world. It was something that only existed in the history books. How would Jiang Pingji know about the mechanical parts and structure? Besides, even if she knew about it, the material technology in that world did not support her making it. Since there was no way to get a printing machine, she could only settle for the next best thing and choose a more stupid method. She engraved the characters needed for the book in advance, then typeset the characters for printing. She could not tell much about 1 or 2 books, but if she printed thousands of books, the efficiency would naturally be incomparable. Su could put down the drawing paper in confusion and said, "Lang Jun this." Jiang Pingji took out her private seal and stamped it on the paper. Then she raised her eyebrows at Suku. You still don't understand?" An idea flashed through Suku's mind. He hurriedly picked up the drawing paper. He was so excited that he did not know how to react. It's not that simple. It's too early to be excited." Jiang Pingji shook her head and said, "At first, I wanted to use clay as a mold, but firing it would take a lot of time. I still have to figure out the composition of the clay to prevent the characters from changing shape. If I want to fire it, I'll need to build a kiln." Suku thought about it and said, "Then I'll look for other materials. Copper, iron, wood. Using copper and iron as raw materials to make a mold would cost a lot of materials. Wood was not bad, but it would also cause problems, such as deformation, moisture, and worms." Jiang Pingji lowered her eyelids and said, "Cedar is actually not bad. It's not easy to get worms, the texture is fine, and it won't change shape too much. If we choose a dry place, it should be stored for a long time. But we still have to try it to know the effect." The key was that the wood was cheap, so it would be easier to carve. Suku nodded solemnly. If these 2 things were done, not only would he be famous for a long time, but at least he would benefit countless students who were eager to study. Work for the present, benefit for the future. Put it away. When we really have a firm foothold, we'll take it one step at a time. Jiang Pingji stood up and patted Suku's shoulder. Lu Shi and the other examiners had to examine the examination papers in a heavily guarded place. He was the main examiner, and the other examiners assisted him. They graded all the papers with names on them. They listed them as excellent, medium, and poor, and then calculated the grades of the other items. Chapter 300. Wei Si held a weak candle in his right hand and walked silently through the corridor. The moonlight elongated his shadow on the door. The master? Wei Si stopped in his tracks and saw a figure sitting upright in front of him. Master Yuanjing tilted his head and waved at Wei Si. "Zixiao, come to me." Seeing the cloak draped over Master Yuanjing's shoulders, Wei Si went forward and sat beside him. He placed the lamp aside. How long has Master been waiting here?" Wei Si did not need to ask to know that Master Yuanjing was waiting for him. It's not important," Master Yuanjing said plainly with a hint of a smile. "Zixiao is not a reckless person. I've heard about today's assessment from Yumo and Xiaoyin. Hitting someone with a book in public, even when you were 3 or 5 years old, you wouldn't have done this." Wei Si's face was slightly red. He lowered his head and admitted his mistake. "Your disciple knows his mistake. Please punish me, Master." Master Yuanjing shook his head and asked, "Why should I punish him? I don't think you did anything wrong. On the contrary, you played very well. It wasn't as if he had beaten someone to death. That scholar's actions were indeed too much. Who wouldn't be infuriated?" Master Yuanjing nagged, "I'm not here to scold you today. I just want to tell you that it's okay to be more casual. Your personality is too serious, and your thoughts are heavy. You like to keep everything to yourself and hide it from everyone. To put it bluntly, other people aren't like roundworms in your stomach. How would they know what you're thinking?" Wei Si remained silent with his head lowered. No one knew if he heard it or not. Master Yuanjing massaged his numb leg and said casually, "There are some things that you should say if you want to say them. Your disciple does not dare to say." Wei Si had a lot of things he wanted to say, but he could not say them no matter how hard he tried. Master Yuanjing smiled. "Zixiao, there are many taboos for strategists. One of them is not to use your own heart to guess the intentions of others. I know why you don't dare to say it. From what you can see, you already have the answer in your heart, so there's no need to say it. Isn't that so?" Wei Si remained silent. Our master Yuanjing smiled helplessly. I don't deny your ability to read people's minds, but I'm afraid you'll miscalculate one person. Even though Master Yuanjing did not name the person, Wei Si had a tacit understanding with this teacher. He knew who it was. Only by thoroughly understanding it can we have a flawless plan. Master Yuanjing pouted his lips at Wei Si and teased, in the future, we'll see each other all the time. If you treat her with the prejudice you had in the past, I'm afraid that the truth will be revealed even faster. The past is gone like smoke. You should observe everything around you with a new attitude. Don't be blinded by the past. If you can't do this, you'll still lose, and lose even more miserably. Wei Si's expression finally changed. He looked at Yuanjing with some shock and avoidance in his eyes. Our master Yuanjing laughed softly and said, I'm old, but I'm not blind yet. After a long time, Wei Si broke the silence. Teacher, I want to leave for a few days. Our master Yuanjing said, because you want to escape? Wei Si shook his head and smiled bitterly. If I were so cowardly and unable to face reality, I would have moved to Zhongzhou with my people. Why would I stay in Langyi and come to Shangjing? It was an accident to meet her. It's not that I can't accept it, but when I saw her in her teens, I didn't have any determination. Instead, I felt a little lost. It was as if I never knew her. Wei Si, who had always been a man of few words, was now like a child. He poured out all the thoughts that he had been suppressing in his heart for a long time in front of Yuanjing. Our master Yuanjing played the role of a listener. He could vaguely guess Wei Si's experience, but he didn't expect that this child had so much conflict and pain in his heart. If you feel uncomfortable, leave for a while and sort out your thoughts, Master Yuanjing said. Wei Si shook his head and said, I'm fine. You don't have to worry. Now that I look at it, many things are different. People are different too, especially her. If I continue to be tied down by the memories of the past, I'm afraid my life will be worse than before. Ri's goal was to leave his name in the annals of history as an honorable strategist, not as a lowly one. Not only was she ridiculed and criticized by the later generations, but it also became a stain on her. I used to think that the former caused him pain, but when the sword pierced his throat, he suddenly realized that the latter was even more unacceptable. Our master Yuanjing looked at Wei Si for a long time and sighed. It's good that you think this way. Get to know people again. Old people have new faces. Wei Si secretly clenched his fist. I understand. On the other side, Lu Shi returned to the Feng residence in a carriage with exhaustion. The rankings of the assessment had already been arranged. He made a copy of the list and stored it in a letter. He sealed it and presented it to the emperor. As for whether the emperor would read it or not, that was not something he could interfere with. The results would be released in 3 days. After the release of the results, it would be the Qionglin banquet. As the general evaluation officer, he had to show up. After that, there was basically nothing for him to do. The guest room was brightly lit. Lu Shi saw his daughter's maid, Takshu, waiting at the door with a lantern in her hand. Lanting didn't come back tonight? He gathered his cloak to block the cold wind from the outside world. Seeing Lu Shi return, Takshu's face lit up and she walked forward. Master, your servant has been waiting for you here on Longjuan's orders. Lu Shi frowned and said seriously, why is Lanting looking for me? Lu Shi had always valued his daughter. She must have something important to tell him and could not be delayed. Lang Jun didn't say. He just asked me to tell you that Lang Jun is waiting in your room. Lu Shi nodded as he walked. He wondered why his daughter was looking for him. At the door of the room, there was indeed a lantern in the room. Jiang Pingji was reading a book under the candlelight. Father. Jiang Pingji looked up when she heard the noise. I heard from Takshu that you were looking for me? Lu Shi hurriedly closed the door to prevent the cold wind from blowing away the warm air in the room. Father, you haven't submitted your resignation report, have you? Jiang Pingji asked. Of course not. I plan to submit it after the Qionglin banquet. Lu Shi sat opposite Jiang Pingji and saw that she was holding a universal geographical map. Lanting, do you have any good suggestions? Father, you want to be a rich man, but I'm unfilial. I'd like to ask you to work hard for a while longer. Lu Shi raised his eyebrows. You're not going to submit the report? Jiang Pengji shook her head and whispered, that's not the case. I want you to try your best to take over Chongzhou. Chongzhou? Lu Shi thought about it and understood. You want to take the opportunity to gather troops? Chapter 301. Lu Shi did not let Jiang Pengji explain in detail. He raised his hand to stop her from speaking. He closed his eyes slightly. The candlelight shone on his eyelashes, casting two small shadows that covered the green in his eyes. You don't have to explain too much. The Feng residence may not be completely safe. Lu Shi did not know Jiang Pengji's perception. He was afraid that the walls had ears. His expression softened. Whatever you want to do, there is nothing I won't do. Chongzhou is actually a good place. Jiang Pengji opened her mouth, as if something was stuck in her throat. She could not spit it out or swallow it. Based on Lu Shi's years of experience in officialdom, how could he not see the danger in Chongzhou? Lu Shi saw her expression and laughed. He raised his hand to rub the top of her head. He said warmly, you don't have to worry about me. Hu County was so chaotic back then, but didn't I survive until now? The northern borderline is ambitious and has been eyeing Chongzhou for a long time. But since they are connected by marriage with the royal family, they will at least pretend to be obedient. Before the princess of the northern borderline turns the royal family upside down, the northern borderline will not make a move. In other words, Chongzhou was still in a relatively safe state for the next few years. It could be governed and developed in peace. However, after this deadline, Chongzhou would have to face the covetous eyes of the three tribes of the northern borderline. It would welcome the trampling of their armored cavalry. Jiang Pengji clenched her fists, pursed her lips, and solemnly promised. Father, please work hard for 2 years. I will take care of you until you are 100 years old. Lu Shi could not help but laugh. His expression became lively. You still don't understand. Although Chongzhou is threatened by the northern borderline, it will be a very safe place for the next 2 years. He shook his head and carefully analyzed the situation for Jiang Pengji. Even if Nanxing can avoid the destruction of the country, they will have to cede land and pay compensation. They will have to ask for peace and pay tribute. The south will not be stable. In contrast, the north is more comfortable. Even if the northern borderline is ambitious, it will be a matter for a few years. Lu Shi was only going to be the magistrate of Chongzhou. He would oversee Chongzhou for 2 years. When the world was really chaotic, Jiang Pengji would take over. The risk was not high, but it was more frightening. Lu Shi understood this logic. After a while, he took out a neatly folded piece of paper from his sleeve. It was stained with ink. Some words could not be read clearly. What is this? Jiang Pengji took it and looked at it. Lu Shi said, Master Yuanjing's disciple wrote about the girl who was teased and left in anger. Jiang Pengji looked at the assessment from afar and naturally knew who Lu Shi was referring to. Why did father bring his exam paper out? As she spoke, she carefully unfolded the piece of paper. Just from the handwriting, one would think that it was a gentle and delicate young lady from a noble family. If this paper is seen by others, I'm afraid there will be trouble. Master Yuanjing is really a wonderful person. Sure enough, he accepts disciples based on fate. Lu Shi shook his head. Nowadays, a lot of people complained about the difficulty of studying. Some great Confucian scholars advocated and appealed to the common people to be able to read and read. However, those were just words. If such a thing really happened, those people would be the ones who resisted the most fiercely. Even if this was a beautiful article, just based on the meaning revealed in it, Wei Ci was useless. Jiang Pengji's interest was piqued. She read the article carefully. Although some words were covered by ink, she could guess the meaning of the full text. I didn't know that he had a brain other than his face. Jiang Pengji smiled, folded the paper, and stuffed it into her sleeve. Lu Shi choked on her words. What did Wei Ci do? Why didn't my daughter get along with him? Having a brain is useless. Who doesn't know how to talk on paper? Jiang Pengji curled her lips. so I need to observe him carefully. Her attention was something that Wei Ci could not avoid. Tsk, I really want to see his horrified expression when he finds out the truth. Lu Shi came back to his senses. Wei Ci was born in the Wei family of Langya. Although he has fallen, he still has his pride. He may not be easily convinced by you. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows when she heard Lu Shi's words. I heard from Huayu that the Wei family has moved back to Zhongzhou, but Wei Ci is still in Dongqing. Because Feng Jin told her about the Wei family, she thought that Wei Ci was from a poor family or an ordinary farmer's family. Now that she looked at him, it seemed that he had a background. Lu Shi said uncertainly, maybe he's temporarily tied up for the assessment? If it's for the assessment, he wouldn't have written such a deviant paper. He obviously doesn't want to be selected. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, I'm not sure about other people, but I'm confident that I can take down Wei Ci. They were coming for her, so where else could she run to? The father and son talked for 15 minutes. Jiang Pingji put on Lu Shi's cloak and went straight to her room. It was late autumn, and the temperature was getting colder every day. Jiang Pingji tightened her cloak to block out the cold air outside. Takshu led the way in front with an orange lamp in her hand. The master and servant passed by the courtyard. Jiang Pingji suddenly felt a little cold water drip on her eyelashes. She couldn't help but raise her hand to touch it. It's raining? She looked up at the sky. The moon was as white as a jade plate, hanging high in the sky. Takshu heard the movement and carefully identified it. She said, Langjun, it's snowing. Snowing? Jiang Pengji blinked and reached out to catch the white flowers falling from the sky. The snowflakes were very small, like fine silver beads. They melted into liquid when they fell on her palm, leaving only a little coldness. It's quite small. Jiang Pengji blinked her eyes and muttered in a low voice. It was the first time in her life that she had seen such gentle and harmless snow. In her memory, snow was supposed to fall in sheets or as hard as white pearls, crashing down from the sky. Taksha laughed, and her eyes curved into the shape of a crescent moon. I guess this is the first snow of the year. It's still early. Even if it snows, it will be very small. In another 1 or 2 months, it will really snow. The sky and the earth will be the same color. It will be very beautiful. Jiang Pingji had Lu Shi's memory. Naturally, she knew when it usually snowed. The snow this year was indeed a little early. The snow was not heavy. Jiang Pingji went back to her room and drank a bowl of cold ginger soup. She took off her clothes and went to sleep. When she woke up the next day, as soon as she opened the door, she was hit by a cold air that was like an icy knife. The courtyard was covered with a layer of white. It was fine yesterday. Why is the snow getting heavier and heavier overnight? Jiang Pingji looked at the sky. Fine snow was falling. Feng Jin was obviously used to it. He ordered the servants to prepare a tea stove and sat opposite Jiang Pingji in the corridor of the courtyard to brew tea. He frowned and looked at the courtyard. It had only been one night, but the snow was already as thick as a knuckle. The weather was indeed unusual. However, since the founding of Dongqing, there had been natural and man-made disasters. It was either a drought or a flood. They were afraid that the nobles would get drunk and enjoy the snow in the garden. They would hold banquets, poetry meetings, and gatherings without a care for the lives of the people outside. Chapter 302. The snow will continue for another day or two. Feng Jin shook his head. It's always like this in Shangjing. It snows earlier and earlier every year. Jiang Pingji looked at the snow-covered roofs in the distance. She frowned as if she was worried about something. On the day of the Qianglin banquet, the snow did not stop. The entire Shangjing city was covered in a layer of white. However, the cold outside could not stop the liveliness of the Qianglin banquet. They toasted each other, sang and danced. The graceful dancers wore watercolored gauze and danced gracefully in the snow. They were like fairies from the 9th heaven who could ascend to immortality at any time. Jiang Pingji saw their bare feet. Their feet were red and blue from the ice. She suddenly lost the mood. She felt uncomfortable watching it, but the other scholars were watching with great interest. This Master Yuanjing is so powerful. His students have taken 2 of the top 3 places. I heard that if Master Yuanjing's disciple Lu Zheng was not born in a poor family, he would be in the top 3. If that's the case, it's scary. I heard that Master Yuanjing has another disciple. Where is he? Are you talking about Wei Zixiao? I heard that someone spoke rudely to him during the assessment. His temper flared up and he left after hitting the person. That's a pity. What's there to pity? He hit someone. He's so rude. He doesn't look like a scholar. He's just a boorish man. Jiang Pingji sat in her seat. She was surrounded by scholars of similar status. All of them were gossiping. Some relied on their family's wealth to buy a position, while others relied on their parents to join in the fun. Jiang Pingji belonged to the latter group. She drank some sake in silence and left the Qianglin banquet with the excuse that she could not hold her liquor. Su Ke drove the carriage and stopped outside. He saw Jiang Pingji walking over, wrapped in a thick white cloak. From afar, she looked like a moving white ball. He suppressed his laughter and hurriedly got off the carriage to put down the stool. He was not a coachman. He just wanted to see where the Qianglin banquet was held. The commoners had the chance to enter. Su Ke would never be able to enter if he did not have other opportunities. Jiang Pingji knew what Su Ke was thinking, so she did not stop him. The weather gets cold really fast. You should wear more clothes when you go out. I told you to wait in the carriage, yet you insist on sitting outside. Isn't this suffering? Here, this is for you to warm your hands, lest you say that I mistreat you behind my back. Su Ke took the delicate hand warmer. It was small and exquisite and was wrapped in a thick layer of cloth. It did not burn his hand and felt like it was meant for a little girl. Lang Jun, you have wronged me. When did I complain about you behind your back? Even if there is, it would be a direct complaint. Su Ke did not want to provoke Jiang Pingji's eyes. No matter what he had in mind, he couldn't hide it. Rather than hiding it and being laughed at, he might as well come out openly. What a glib tongue. Jiang Pingji said with a smile. Just as she was about to step onto the carriage, she caught a glimpse of Wei Ci, who was dressed in a green Confucian robe, standing in the wind and snow with an umbrella in his hand. She stopped in her tracks and turned to Su Ke. Take the hand warmer and hide in the carriage. I have something to do. After Su Ke heard this, he was surprised. He could not help but shift his gaze towards Wei Ci. As someone who was obsessed with invisible voices, it was hard for him not to remember anyone with a special voice. Not to mention, other than his moving voice, Wei Ci could also be considered a person with a clear demeanor and handsome bones. Jiang Pingji walked forward and teased, Zixiao, are you waiting for me here? Wei Ci did not overreact like before. Instead, he said calmly, I'm just waiting here like your accountant. As for who I'm waiting for, it depends on who I'm waiting for. If you think I'm waiting for you, it's okay to think so. Was he mocking her for being narcissistic? Jiang Pingji's expression darkened. She looked at Wei Ci with an inquisitive gaze. Wei Ci did not avoid her gaze. He looked down and slightly lowered his head to look into her eyes. His eyes were open, not empty like before. As he spoke, he tilted the umbrella in his hand slightly and covered the top of Jiang Pingji's head. The wind and snow are strong. You should go back quickly. Did you write the article yourself? Jiang Pingji asked Wei Ci with a serious face. She was not being polite. Wei Ci smiled calmly and asked her in reply, Do you think your father leaked the article so that I can find someone to write it for me? Jiang Pingji was silent. It was not because she suspected that Wei Ci would find someone to write for him, but she felt that Wei Ci's thinking was too different from the literati of the time. If everyone in the world went to study, who would do the farming? If there were more people studying, there would be more people sharing the cake. How would the aristocrats, who monopolized the inheritance of knowledge, be willing to do that? Wei Ci was also born in an aristocratic family. Even if the Wei family of Langya had withered, their ancestors were once prominent. The aristocrats had a sense of pride in their bones. They boasted that their bloodline was superior to others and that they were born to be superior to others. Either Wei Ci really had such a broad vision, or he was just a naive youth who didn't know much about the world. No matter how Jiang Pingji looked at him, Wei Si did not seem to be the latter. You have a glib tongue, she said with a fake smile. It seems that you already know how to maintain your composure in front of me. Wei Si's voice sounded a little relieved. Once bitten, twice shy. Although I dare not be on par with Yumo and the others, I am not a fool without talent. Naturally, I will not fall in the same place twice. If you still want to test me, I am afraid you will be disappointed. Jiang Pingji turned her head to look at him and said with a drawn-out, "Oh. You should be glad that there are many people and carriages here." Wei Si raised his eyebrows. What do you mean? Zixiao is talented and his clothes match the vast snowy scenery. If there is no one around, Jiang Pingji did not finish her sentence. Instead, she raised her eyebrows at him and gave him a very ambiguous and flirtatious hint. Wei Si suddenly tightened his grip on the umbrella handle and straightened his expression. Go eat the snow. Jiang Pengji laughed so hard that even her shoulders were shaking. Wei Si's reaction was really interesting. He was like an arrogant cat. Unintentionally, Jiang Pengji looked at the vast snowy landscape and suddenly said this. After the Qianglin banquet, my father is going to resign. Wei Si's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. Your father has just become an official. Why is he going to resign? Take a guess. Wei Si looked at the short man who was not even as tall as his chest and said in a low voice, if you don't intervene, your father may be able to retire and have some peace. Now that the situation in Dongqing is getting more and more serious, the day Nanxing is destroyed will be the day the world will be in chaos. Retiring is a good way to avoid the chaos. But if Langjun intervenes, I'm afraid that this memorial will be a move to advance by retreating. Retreat to advance? That's a good word. Then take a guess, which step am I advancing to? Wei Si closed his eyes. If everything had not changed, the person in front of him would not be so ambitious. At most, she would lead a bunch of bandits to stir up trouble in Dongqing. But now, Wei Si could feel that she wanted to be the emperor many years earlier than she was in the past. If that was the case. He closed his eyes and thought for a while, then he said two words with certainty. Chengde. Fortune was found in danger. Whether it was her in the past or now, Wei Si did not expect her to be steady and sure. You really know me well. Chapter 303. He calmed himself down and asked calmly, From what I can see, don't you know me very well? Jiang Pingji smiled and did not continue to interrogate Wei Si. Boiling a frog in warm water had to be done slowly. What if a pot of boiling water was poured down and scared people away? She looked like she was looking at the sky, but she was actually paying attention to the paper umbrella in Wei Si's hand. Even though he threw a tantrum and moved the umbrella away, he quietly moved it back and let the snow pile up on his shoulders. Jiang Pingji raised her hand and took off the cloak, indicating for Wei Si to put it on. I'll have to trouble you to take care of me when I study in Langyi. Wei Si glanced at the thick white fur cloak and said calmly, You and I can be considered to be acquaintances. Master also admires your talent. I think you won't face any difficulties in the academy. Why do you need to bribe me? I'm not afraid of the cold or heat, so it doesn't matter how much I wear. But Zixiao is weak, and we're still standing in the snow waiting for someone. It's better to be careful. Jiang Pengji threw the cloak into his arms. He could wear it if he wanted. After that, Jiang Pengji turned and walked to her carriage. She stepped on the bench and said, To the Feng residence. Just as she raised her hand to lift the curtain, Su Ku, who had been watching them, handed the hand stove back to her. The driver of the carriage, who was wearing a bamboo hat, pulled the reins and drove away. He happened to pass by Wei Si. You gave the cloak to Wei Langjun. Takshu will talk about you when you go back. Su Kun knelt near the door of the carriage and put his hands into warm gloves. The thick layer of rabbit fur was very comfortable. Jiang Pingji held the hand stove and added charcoal in it. The temperature was higher than before. Your Langjun is strong and healthy. He can kill 2 cows with his bare hands. Will he get sick without a cloak? Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows. He's just a weak scholar. He doesn't wear much, but he's standing outside like a log. Isn't he afraid of catching a cold? Su Ku was suddenly speechless. Indeed, his Lang Jun looked young and weak, but in fact his fighting ability was off the charts. His appearance was too deceiving. I heard from Huayu that Zixiao's family has moved to Zhongzhou and returned to the clan. He stayed in Langyi alone. Who knows how many maids and old women took care of him? The weather changes so fast. I guess he didn't prepare many clothes to keep warm. Jiang Pingji was a meticulous person, but she rarely took the initiative to care about others. In other words, in her opinion, there was no need to care at all. Everyone had 2 hands and 2 feet. If they couldn't even take care of themselves, wouldn't they be? That wouldn't work in the ancient times. After Su Ke heard this, he couldn't help but sigh. His Lang Jun seemed to have become more humane. The Jasper Forest banquet seemed to be a celebratory banquet held for a few scholars who had stood out from the crowd, but in reality, it was merely a place for people to sing praises and flatter. Many of the courtiers exerted all their skills, fawning and servile appearances, which made people secretly feel angry. The Qianglin banquet seemed to be a celebration for a few outstanding scholars, but in fact, it was just a place for people to sing praises and flatter. Many officials tried their best to flatter and flatter, which made people angry. Han Yu was a hot-tempered person. He didn't have the slightest intention of restraining himself in front of his close friends. Looking at it now, it seems that it was the right decision to beat them up and leave that day as a filial piety. You are so servile and have no backbone at all. It's just, Cheng Jing stared at Han Yu and stopped him from continuing. Be careful with your words. Have you forgotten? Be careful with your words and actions. Have you forgotten these 4 words? Cheng Jing said in a low voice. If you get yourself killed because of this. Compared to Han Yu and Cheng Jing's nervousness, Lu Jing secretly stuck out his belly and resisted the urge to eat. There was a lot of delicious food at the Qianglin banquet. Lu Zheng was born in a poor family. He was the son of a hunter and liked to roll in the mud since he was a child. If Master Yuanjing hadn't said that he was destined to meet him and brought him back to the academy to teach him, he wouldn't be qualified to stand at the Qianglin banquet. It was a rare opportunity. It would be a waste if he didn't eat. He was not Han Yu or Cheng Jing. He didn't eat much, but he was angry. The walls have ears. You should pay attention. Wenbin, this is not a good place to complain. Lu Jing paced slowly with his belly full. He looked very relaxed, but he was so full that he couldn't walk. Han Yu took a deep breath and tried his best to suppress his anger. From afar, the few of them saw Wei Si hugging a white velvet cloak in his arms. He stood rooted to the ground in a daze, not knowing what he was thinking. Lu Zheng was thick-skinned enough. He stepped forward with a smile and pretended to reach out to take the cloak from Wei Si's arms. He even said, Zixiao is indeed the most considerate. He knows that I'm not wearing much today, so he specially brought the cloak here. I thank him in advance. Before his hand touched the cloak, Wei Si took a step back and said bluntly, It's not for you. Lu Zheng wasn't angry. Instead, he sneakily looked at the tie on the collar of the cloak. The end of the tie was decorated with 2 delicate furballs, which didn't match Wei Si's style. Not only that, but the size of the cloak was also inappropriate. Then who is it for? Lu Jing asked. Wei Si ignored him. He glanced at Han Yu and Cheng Jing's expression and sighed. You don't look happy. Were you bullied at the banquet? Han Yu didn't pay attention to the cloak. His attention was drawn back to the Qianglin banquet. The anger that he had suppressed just now came out again. The so-called important officials in the court are all servile and flattering. They don't have any dignity. The court will be finished sooner or later if this continues. Wei Si glanced around and felt relieved when he didn't see anyone. They are just servile to the bone. Why are you angry with them? Wei Si smiled carelessly. I heard that before the Qianglin banquet, the head of the secretariat, Feng Ren, resigned and returned to his hometown. Not only did the government not ask him to stay, but they promoted a confidant. Isn't that clear enough for you to see? You want a docile and obedient domestic cat, not a wild cat that is hard to tame and arrogant. Han Yu almost exploded. Who are you calling a wild cat? Wei Si continued, it's just the Qianglin banquet. You can't control your temper. What will you do in the future? What do you mean? Han Yu asked. Nowadays, the eunuchs secretly sell their titles. The price of each official position is clearly marked and they give it to anyone who has money. Do you think that it's only the eunuchs who are greedy? The greedy ones are the big ones. Wei Si and the others got into the carriage. The charcoal in the carriage dispelled the cold air. He pointed to the sky. Wenbin is ranked 3rd in the assessment. When the time comes, he will only get a small official position. It's not even as high as the official positions that those scoundrels buy with money. You will be so angry that 1 Buddha is born and 2 Buddhas will go to heaven. Han Yu almost choked on his words. Wei Zixiao, you are too mean. Wei Si was not afraid and continued, I have something more mean. Do you want to hear it? Lu Jing secretly held back his laughter. Cheng Jing shook his head helplessly and fiddled with the silver wire charcoal in the charcoal basin. Chapter 304. Han Yu was a stubborn person. He would jump up and down when Wei Si provoked him a little. However, Wei Si didn't continue to bully Han Yu this time. Instead, he sighed. The official's family indulges the eunuchs. They even pretend that they don't see it when they sell titles and positions. As for the relatives of the emperor, when one of them achieves the Dao, all of them follow suit. It's obvious that the official wants to support 2 parties and make things difficult for the aristocratic families. There are 2 reasons for Feng Ren's resignation. Firstly, he wanted to defend his second son, Feng Jin, against injustice. Secondly, he could tell that Dongqing was seriously ill and could not be saved. Cheng Jing continued, Wenbin's temperament can still be tempered. He is so angry now. What can he do in the future? Feng Ren's resignation had already become a signal. If the other aristocratic families had foresight, they would have left one after another or stood by indifferently. The vacated positions naturally became the cake that the eunuchs and the relatives of the emperor fought for. No matter which side won, the people they placed in the positions were mostly people with bad intentions who only cared about their own interests. If the imperial court could still be saved, it would be a blessing in disguise. The corner of Han Yu's mouth twitched. The 2 people in front of him echoed each other, which made him look immature. Shaoyin, don't you have anything to say? Han Yu asked Lu Zheng for help. Lu Zheng snorted, I have no ambition in my life. I just have enough to eat, wear warm clothes, and have a house to live in. As long as I am an official, I am still an official. I just need to live my own life and take care of the people under my rule. As for the rest, I don't have the ability. Let the capable ones take care of it. Han Yu was so angry that he almost fell down. What kind of help is this? It's a stupid teammate. Cheng Jing said, Wenbin, don't be stubborn. Do what you should do. It's not a good time to be an official in the current situation. Han Yu felt wronged. Are the 3 of you here to comfort me or to piss me off? Wei Si winked mischievously and said to him, I didn't say that I'm here to comfort you. Han Yu was speechless. That was the end of their friendship. According to the previous practice, the scholars who stood out in the assessment would receive the appointment letter from the imperial court within half a month and be dispatched to various places. Regarding the arrangement of scholars, they would generally consider their abilities and family backgrounds. Although their official positions were not high, they were very challenging, and it was easy for them to accumulate experience. In more remote places, the official rank was slightly higher, while in more prosperous places, it was slightly lower. If there were family members making arrangements everywhere, their official positions and locations could also be changed at their discretion. It was very practical. However, now that the court was in chaos, many officials had tacitly forgotten about this matter, and the emperor did not even mention it. Yuan Jing and his entourage stayed in Shangjing for half a month. Many students were worried that something might happen. Wei Si and the rest were able to settle down. Every day, they would either quietly study and practice calligraphy, or play a few rounds with their classmates and recite poems to pass the time. Lu Zheng was sitting at the side of the chessboard, watching Wei Si beat Han Yu up. He was suddenly enlightened and suddenly said, It's already been half a month. If I don't go back soon, I'm afraid I'll have to spend the new year in Shangjing. Han Yu looked at the situation on the chessboard and felt his head hurt. It's not good to leave before the appointment letter from the imperial court. Wei Ci placed his chess piece with a smile, forcing Han Yu into a dead end. Perhaps this letter of appointment won't be sent down. Why do you say so? Han Yu asked. Wei Ci said sarcastically, perhaps all the vacant official positions have been sold out. Of course, it was impossible for all the official positions to be sold out. However, the imperial court was busy preparing for the marriage between the princess of the northern borderline, Xianxia, and the second prince. Dongqing still wanted to wrangle with the northern borderline. All of them wanted to gain benefits for themselves. Why would they care about these scholars? These days, apart from Feng Ren's retirement, it was the retirement of the county chief of Hu County, Lu Shi. For the former, the emperor was happy to take back the position of the head of the secretariat and promote his confidant. For the latter, the emperor wanted to do the same. However, Lu Shi presented a memorial at the imperial court meeting. Immediately, someone jumped out and said how hard Lu Shi had worked all these years. Under his rule, Hu County had turned from a desolate and uninhabited county to a major grain-producing county. He had alleviated the food shortage of the two neighboring states. He was a meritorious minister. He was still so young. If he retired, it would be the biggest loss for Dongqing. The speech was so impassioned that the emperor was too embarrassed to accept Lu Shi's retirement. If that's the case, do any of you have any good suggestions? Although the emperor was shameless, he did not want to embarrass himself at the imperial court meeting. He still had to cover his embarrassment. Lu Shi took the opportunity to repeat his intention to retire. Another official jumped out and said no. If the emperor agreed, wouldn't the world mistakenly think that the emperor coveted the riches of Hu County and wanted to burn the bridge after crossing it to take the opportunity to seize the fruits of victory from others? Lu Shi was a brick. He would move wherever there was a shortage. After an intense discussion, someone suddenly mentioned that Chongzhou still lacked a prefecture magistrate. A prefecture magistrate was more important than a county chief. The former managed the land of a state, while the latter managed a small county. Everyone had completely forgotten that Chongzhou only had Shangyu County and Changha County. Shangyu County had a total of 6 cities. 3 of them were still in the hands of the northern borderline. Its overall area was the smallest among the 6 states of Dongqing. Its north was also connected to the northern borderline. Who knew how long it would take to lose one's head? Although Hu County was only a county, its area was comparable to a state. Moreover, it was now incomparably rich under Lu Shi's governance. The Dongqing emperor weighed the pros and cons in his heart and decisively made a decision. He pretended to express how much he valued Lu Shi. He also said that the world was in turmoil. If Lu Shi were to retire now, it would be a loss for Dongqing and a regret for the people. Without a second word, he threw the position of Chongzhou magistrate onto Lu Shi's head. Lu Shi appeared tired and unresigned as he agreed, but in his heart, he sighed. He had a godlike teammate by his side. His opponents were all pigs. The difficulty was too low. There was no challenge at all. Lu Shi bore the steaming, freshly baked magistrate of Chongzhou and went to court with a cold expression. He ignored everyone. He doesn't know what's good for him. He was promoted from a county chief to a prefecture magistrate, and now he's putting on a straight face. Tisk, who doesn't know that Hu County is now in high demand? 1 county can feed 2 states. How much food is that? From what I see, Lu Shi has no intention of retiring. He's just putting on an act, hoping to stay in Hu County. Who knew that the emperor would transfer him to Chongzhou? Chongzhou, what kind of place is that? 3 wolves are watching from the north. He can't sleep well at night. Oh? Isn't that a big loss? Cleverness can be mistaken for cleverness. Who asked him to be so stupid? I wonder who will take over as the county chief of Hu County. In any case, it can't be the 2 of us. Let's just watch the show. Everyone wants a piece of Hu County. The small discussions around him drifted into Lu Shi's ears. His face was still livid. After he boarded the carriage, he suddenly smiled faintly. Cleverness can be mistaken for cleverness? Soon, everyone would know who the real stupid person was. The carriage stopped. Lu Shi got down from the sedan chair. His confidant came forward to speak to him. Master, the person Lang Jun is looking for has been found. Lu Shi was stunned. His expression quickly changed. Found? Yes, they look 70% similar. His confidant gestured a 7. Lu Shi's chest was beating rapidly, as if it was about to jump out of his throat. Chapter 305. Lu Shi's eyes darkened and he ordered, "Bring her to Lanting. She will handle it." Hearing that Lu Shi was going to hand the girl over to Lu Shi, the confidant's face suddenly became bitter. He stuttered and hesitated. Lu Shi saw the situation and said, "Just say what you want to say. You don't have to hide half of it." "I didn't mean to hide it. It's just that I heard from the master that you want to hand the girl over to Lang Jun. I don't think it's appropriate." The confidant hesitantly moved closer to Lu Shi and finally said what was on his mind. "That girl's identity is not clean. If Lang Jun's temperament changes, I won't be able to absolve myself of the blame." Lu Shi immediately understood the meaning of the confidant's words. His expression suddenly became very interesting. He hesitated for a while and said, "Follow me." The confidant followed Lu Shi's footsteps and carefully kept a step away from him. He lowered his head and hands, not daring to look around. "Tell me in detail. What's wrong with the girl's identity?" Although Lu Shi had guessed it, he still had to confirm it. The confidant knelt down. There was no one around, so there was no need to worry about eavesdropping. "The girl I found is 14 years old. Her mother is a lowly prostitute. Her father is unknown." The confidant was very helpless. They had secretly searched for the girl based on the portrait Lu Shi had given them. The girl was the most similar in appearance and temperament. Although the other candidates were clean, they were not as similar. After thinking about it, the confidant recommended the girl. Lowly prostitute? Lu Shi furrowed his brows. He was very unhappy with the identity. Has she received guests before? He wasn't sure what his daughter wanted to do, but he knew that the girl he found was probably a honey trap. The confidant's expression twisted and he said carefully, "Master, you also know that prostitutes usually live in shameful slums. Most of the customers who come and go are peddlers and hooligans. Women who grow up in such places are unlucky. At the age of 5 or 6, they are, not to mention, that person is already 14. Lu Shi's face darkened when he heard the confidant. "Bring the girl to Lanting and let her make a decision. Continue to investigate secretly and see if there are more similar and suitable candidates." The confidant took the order and bowed and left. Lu Shi sat where he was, immersed in the shadows of the room. After a long time, he seemed to have understood something. He held his forehead with one hand, and his expression seemed to be smiling yet not smiling, crying yet not crying. It faintly carried a trace of pleasure of being about to take revenge, which washed away his usual gentleness, and his whole body was surrounded by a cold and poisonous aura. So what if she's the daughter of a prostitute? He seemed to be listless as he murmured in a low voice. His voice was suppressing the viciousness that made one shudder. It made one's hair stand on end. "In the future, if I wear that face and use that body to turn Dongqing upside down, then that's what I call delightful." Akeo was born in the slums of the poor. On the day of her birth, it was snowing heavily. Many of the adults froze to death, but she survived. Her mother was a prostitute, and now she was also a prostitute, and a prostitute under her mother. What was a prostitute? The lowest of prostitutes could be casually used for 3 to 5 copper coins. Even though she was scared to death, in order to survive, she had no choice but to feign civility and serve them well. Otherwise, not only would the customers not let her go, but the brothel keeper above her, her mother, would also not let her go. She was always dressed in ragged linen clothes that had been washed and patched. Every day, she had to clean the house, wash the clothes, wash the dishes, and cook. She had to serve the madam and the other prostitutes until they were comfortable. Then she would lie on the tattered mat and wait for one customer after another. When she was a child, she was carelessly taken advantage of by a few ruffians and lost her virginity. Her mother beat her like crazy, and then forced her to accept customers and inherit her mother's business. She lived in a muddle. Over the years, she did not know how many children were beaten. She had only lived for 14 years, but she felt that she had lived more than half of her life. Even though she was born beautiful, she now had a lot of white hair. Her face was haggard, and her eyes were sunken. She thought that this was the end of her life, but she did not expect to be taken away from the slums by a man dressed in a very powerful outfit 2 days ago. She knelt on the ground, trembling, and her skinny body trembled like a sieve. Her whole body wished she could lie on the ground, and she did not dare to look around. After waiting for a long time, the sound of a paper door opening came from behind her, and unfamiliar footsteps walked past her. After a rustling sound, the person sat directly on the seat of honor. "What's your name?" Judging from the voice, the person should not be old, maybe even younger than Akeo. She had heard many hoarse voices and all kinds of malicious yelling, but she had never heard such a clear and peaceful voice. Her body trembled uncontrollably, and Akeo felt that her mouth was not hers anymore. She even forgot the instinct to open her mouth to speak. Seeing her behavior, Jiang Pingji was not in a hurry to say anything. Instead, she asked Takshu to serve tea and drink it to calm her nerves. The audience in the streaming room had long been looking forward to it. They did not know what the streamer was up to, who was so important that she would leave behind the remaining chessboard and the young man Feng Jin, and come over so quickly. Looking at it now, it did not seem to be much. Lao Cg Lianmeng, I feel that the streamer would not do unnecessary things. She attaches so much importance to this person. Her identity must be very powerful. To Cg Jiwu, #Laftihi. Maybe she is the streamer's younger sister who is stranded outside. In Yueja Juga Chinma, there are no clues. I can't guess the streamer's intentions. I'd better get a small stool and watch slowly. After waiting for a while, Jiang Pingji felt that the other party's emotions had stabilized, so she asked again, "What's your name?" Akeo's ears were flushed, and she felt a sense of inferiority that she could not wait to crawl into the ground. "My name is Akeo." Although Akeo did not sound nice, it was a proper name. "Akeo?" Jiang Pingji heard it and asked again, "Do you know who asked you to come here?" Akeo's thin and weak body trembled, and she said in a low voice like a cat, "I don't know. I vaguely remember that it was a master." For Akeo, people who were neat and tidy were considered wealthy. She had never seen the clothes worn by Lu Shi's confidant. Such a dignified person could be considered a master. Jiang Pingji asked again, "Then do you know why you are here?" Akeo bit her lower lip, and there was a little embarrassment on her thin and weak face. Only then did she slowly sit up straight with her head hanging down. She put her hands on her waist and pretended to pull off the belt around her waist. If it was on a normal day, Akeo would at most be wrapped in a tattered dress, and she would wear nothing underneath. Because she was poor, she could not afford to wear it. Besides, it was useless for a prostitute to wear clothes. In the end, she would have to strip naked to serve others. Lu Shi's confidant brought her back and asked the maid to prepare a complete set of clothes for her. She washed it from head to toe with soap several times. Chapter 306. Therefore, she untied the belt around her waist and only unbuttoned the outer layer of clothes. She was still wrapped in 2 or 3 layers of clothes. Jiang Pingji saw that and stood in front of Akeo. Akeo clenched her fists nervously and embarrassedly. She thought that a strange body would press down on her, but she saw a pair of clean, white hands in her sight. They were really clean. Even the round fingernails had a transparent luster. The clothes that were taken off were neatly put back on by those hands. The belt was tied in a beautiful knot at the waist. "I didn't ask you to come here to do this." Naturally, the excited veterans in the streaming room who were waiting for the girl to take off her clothes and offer herself for sex could stop for a while. Akeo no longer lowered her head. She thought that she was hiding something and quietly raised her head. She wanted to see Jiang Pingji's face. She was stunned when she saw her face. She was younger than she had imagined. Such a young noble family's young master would also seek pleasure in the slums? She was confused. Then, what should I do? Akeo asked in a daze. Enjoy life. Jiang Pengji looked at Akeo's face carefully. According to Lu Shi's confidant, this girl was 70% similar to that girl. If she was taken good care of, she would probably look even more similar when she grew up in the future. It was as if she had been reborn. As the saying went, beauty was in the bones, not in the skin. Even if the girl was very thin and her face was tired, she was still beautiful. Enjoy life. Yes, live like a concubine. A concubine? Akeo widened her eyes in shock. That was the emperor's daughter, the high and mighty princess, right? A very beautiful face. It will let you live the best life for the rest of your life. Jiang Pengji did not hide her praise. Even if Akeo had gray hair, a thin body, and a haggard face, she still had a kind of beauty. Akeo also came to her senses at this moment. Her expression changed and she was a little thoughtful. There was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. How could such a good thing happen to her? If she had such a good life, how could she have been bullied by a few hooligans when she was 7 or 8 years old? She had to crawl home half dead. She had been so wronged, and she was even beaten by her mother with a matchstick. Her mother scolded her for being indecent and saying that she was born to be a slut. He had suffered so much in the past, so why did good things befall him now? I will let you live more comfortably than Empress Concubine. Jiang Pengji sat in front of Akeo. She did not deliberately explain anything. She just waited for her reaction. Then, what should this lowly servant do to live better than Empress Concubine? Akeo secretly tightened her sleeves. She could not help but feel nervous and afraid when facing Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji smiled. The girl in front of her was of low birth, but she was very smart. She could be molded. Be loyal to me. Even if you have to cross a mountain of daggers or a sea of flames, you have to step over it for me. If you work for me, I'll let you live a better life. Equivalent exchange. There was nothing in this world that could be enjoyed without sewing. I know what your life was like in the past. It's not an exaggeration to say that it was hell on earth. Are you really willing to be treated as a commodity for the rest of your life and be bullied for a few copper coins? Akeo's heart skipped a beat. Countless disgusting faces flashed in front of her eyes, from the hooligans of 12 or 13 to the shameless old men of 50 or 60. She could not help but ask herself, this person said that she had value. Should she not seize it and continue to live a life that everyone despised? She no longer wanted to live the life of receiving and sending people off. If she continued, sooner or later, she would die under a man's body. She was only 14 years old this year, but she had already seen the outcome of aging. Her mother valued those fresh and young prostitutes more. There was a fixed number of customers every day. She was the only one who had to take off her clothes to serve when someone paid. But people in this line of work eat to show their age. You're already 14 years old. After working for so many years, even the most delicate flowers will be destroyed. Akeo could not help but think of the 11-year-old girl that her mother had newly bought. Her voice echoed in her ears, and she could not help but shiver. Clenching her teeth, Akeo could not help but grab Jiang Pengji's sleeves with both hands. She begged and sobbed, I'm not resigned to this. Don't send me back. Then work for me. Jiang Pengji's voice did not fluctuate at all, as if she was just informing her of one thing. Okay. The audience in the streaming room expressed that their worldview was once again shattered by the streamer. Was she streaming how to abduct and sell people? Quachuangkai, I'm stunned. Even human traffickers are not as domineering as the streamer. Lao Cg Lianmeng, I seem to understand a little. The streamer wants to play a honey trap? Nugatang, honey trap? People come willingly for the honey trap. The streamer is coaxing and coercing, isn't she? Yinuagia Zhuga Chinma, I can tell that you didn't watch the streaming carefully. The streamer's words just now obviously revealed a message. This little girl may have lived an inhumane life in the past. Didn't you see the bruises on her neck? The streamer wants to use her to play a honey trap and sell her body. The little girl can also take the opportunity to escape from hell and live a good life. It's an equivalent exchange. Even so, some audience in the streaming room still could not accept it. Jiang Pingji, the streamer, was challenging their worldview. However, it seemed that some audience in the streaming room had a more twisted worldview than Jiang Pingji. Lao Cg Lianmeng, streamer, you can't be so straightforward. Who knows if a person who can be moved by benefits will be attracted by better benefits? You should move her with emotions and reason. Little girls are more emotional and easy to deceive. I believe you can do it. Yinuagia Zhuge Qin Ma. Well, although the person above is a little cold-blooded, you do need to be more cautious. There's nothing wrong with that. The audience in the streaming room. According to Jiang Pingji's personality, how could she not consider these things? She could see clearly what kind of person a KO was. Lu Shi's illegitimate daughter married Wu Ma Jun. There were at least 2 years of buffer time. Within these 2 years, it all depended on whether a KO could pass the test and become a valuable chess piece. Moreover, Jiang Pingji did not need a KO to do anything dangerous. She only needed to make herself fair and plump, dress up beautifully every day, avoid conspiracies and tricks, and live a lazy and comfortable life. With this face alone, she was destined to be praised to the skies. The name Akeo is not good. Change it. Jiang Pingji tilted her head and thought about it. She said meaningfully, Hui Jun, this is the name. Akeo did not know what the word Hui Jun was, but it sounded very proper and pleasant. It did not sound like a poor girl could use it at all. She bowed and bowed. Thank you, Master Langjun. You work for me. Naturally, I can't treat you unfairly. Jiang Pingji asked her, what do you want to do the most now? Ko. The current Hui Jun thought about it seriously and asked her timidly, what do you want to do the most, no matter what? I will definitely do it for you as long as it is within my capabilities. Hui Jun bit her lip. Her face was pale, but she said firmly, I want to kill a few people. They are all bad people who deserve to die. If it were not for those ruffians, she might not have become a prostitute. Even though she knew that it was unrealistic, because her mother had taken a fancy to her face long ago and felt that she was a rare commodity, but she had lost her chastity. In her mother's eyes, she was worthless. Chapter 307. Jiang Pingji placed her fingers together in a comfortable and happy posture. Remember to hide Huijuan's identity so that no one finds out. Lu Shi's confidant was stunned when he heard the name Huijun. He couldn't remember who she was for a moment. Jiang Pingji saw his confusion and explained, Huijun is the girl just now. Find someone to change her identity. The confidant accepted the order and said firmly, Don't worry, Langjun. I will clean up her identity. Be careful. Don't give yourself away. After saying this, Jiang Pingji reminded him worriedly. Fabricating a household registration out of thin air is the easiest way to expose flaws. It's better to find someone who hasn't been cancelled and let Huijun replace it. Jiang Pingji tapped her fingers on the table. The household registration system in this era was very backward. Unlike her era, there was almost no possibility of fraud. In ancient times, because of backward technology and inconvenient transportation, many people didn't have household registration. Many people on the household registration died or disappeared, and they didn't cancel it for more than a decade. This kind of identity was very difficult to verify, and it was easy to take advantage of loopholes. Instead of taking the risk of creating a new identity for Huijun, it was better to let her replace the identity of someone who had similar experiences as her. Lu Shi's confidant nodded and accepted the order. Jiang Pingji said, I have nothing else to do here. You can leave. Since he was a confidant that Lu Shi valued, his ability to handle matters naturally could not be underestimated. Soon, the matter was settled. Akeo's mother, your Akeo is back. Quickly go back and see. The woman who was called Akeo's mother wore heavy makeup. Her clothes were frivolous, revealing a large area of her fair chest. She waved a yellowish fan in her hand. Her face was smeared with low-quality rouge, and her lips were painted with thick lipstick. Her slender waist and plump buttocks swayed gently. The curve made many ruffians who passed by jealous. They only felt that their throats were a little hot. What are you shouting about? She's back. That wicked girl left with the nobles for 2 or 3 days. She's forgotten about me. What a traitor. The woman's actual age was only in her early 30s, but she looked like a woman in her 40s. Despite the heavy makeup, some signs could still be seen in her eyes. She must have been a beauty when she was young. However, because one's appearance came from one's heart, her eyes and brows always carried a bit of maliciousness and harshness, which made people's hearts beat fast and not dare to get close to her. No, Akao's mother. Akao, the one who came to report the news, was also a poor woman who lived in the slums. Although she looked down on Akao's mother for selling herself, selling her daughter, and harming other women, she still felt a little pity for Akao, who was a girl who grew up under her watch. She's just a little girl. It's fine if she comes back, but she wants me, her mother, to kneel and welcome her? The woman had a bad premonition, but she was more annoyed with her neighbor. Your Akao is gone. What? Her money tree was dead? The woman was so shocked that her expression changed. She hurriedly followed her neighbor back home. There were already many people watching the show in front of the broken door. The woman rudely pushed the onlookers away and walked into the dark room. There was a girl in disheveled clothes in the room. She was her prostitute. She had just received a guest not long ago, and her face was still numb. She held the few pieces of rags that could not be wrapped around her body and shivered. There was a roll of mat in the middle of the room, and the mat was wrapped into a spring roll. The woman went forward to take a closer look and almost fainted. She lifted the mat with trembling hands and saw a female corpse with a festered face and a rough outline lying on the ground. Not to mention the face, the body was covered with marks of whipping and sex. The woman did not believe that it was Akao. She quickly tore the clothes on the female corpse and turned it over. There was a little red on the buttocks. This was Akao's birthmark. At this time, she had to accept the fact that Akao was taken out by her benefactor and was humiliated and tortured to death. Most of the onlookers were residents near the slums. They knew how this woman usually treated Akao. Even an enemy would not humiliate others like this. Now that Akao was dead, it was exactly what this woman wanted. But the poor girl died too miserably. To their surprise, the woman who should have spat on the corpse did not humiliate the corpse. Instead, she collapsed on the corpse and burst into tears. The blue veins on her forehead bulged, and her tears and snot smeared the heavy makeup on her face, which made the onlookers feel very strange. Akao's mother has already. Alas, I'm sorry for your loss. Tidy up this child so that she can die with dignity. The woman who informed the woman could not bear it and came up to persuade her gently. Buy a better coffin for Akao. Those beasts sent her back and gave us 10 taels of silver. According to the price of 1 or 2 copper coins for a prostitute, she did not know how many times she had to sell the coffin for 10 taels of silver. In the eyes of the onlookers, the price of this compensation was worth it. The woman cried so hard that she almost could not breathe. She only survived after her neighbor pinched her philtrum. Duckweed. The woman only felt that the scenery before her eyes was spinning as if the world had turned upside down. She mumbled in a low voice, "Slut? Made so miserable." After that, her head tilted, and she actually breathed her last. With such a big thing happening in the slums, there were naturally many onlookers watching the show. No one knew that 4 dirty local ruffians had quietly disappeared. There were 4 more corpses in the mass grave outside the city. Each of them was stabbed with a dagger and died of blood loss. It's almost time. It's time to go, Xianxia. Akao, who should have died, stood near the mass grave and looked at the 4 corpses that could not be identified with their original appearance. Her gaze was complicated. Her blood-stained hands were still trembling, and her 2 calves were trembling nonstop, but there was an unprecedented carefree feeling in her heart. Well, I'm coming. She put on the wide hood of the cloak, covering most of her face, only revealing her slender chin. She clenched both sides of the cloak tightly with both hands to block the cold wind outside. She stepped on the sedan chair and entered the inconspicuous carriage. The carriage quietly left the mass grave. As the chaos passed, she was also buried here. Only Hui Jun was alive. Are you sure? You heard Akao's mother mention the name Hui Yun? When Lu Shi heard the reply of his confidant, his expression was a little strange. The confidant was originally worried that there would be changes, so he pretended to be a poor person and mixed in with the onlookers, but he did not expect to have an unexpected gain. Yes, I'm sure. Hui Yun, Lu Shi silently said it twice. The pronunciation was the same, but the words were different. The former was the new name that Lanting gave to Akao. It was impossible for Akao's mother to know. In that case, the name that she muttered before she died could only be that woman. Chapter 308. This year's first snowfall lasted for more than half a month. The weather became colder day by day. Many houses were crushed by the snow, and the number of casualties was unknown. A few aristocratic families in Shangjing opened granaries and set up porridge stalls everywhere. Even more wealthy families continued to lead a befuddled life. Jiang Pingji was temporarily staying in the Feng residence. When she heard that there was a porridge stall, she followed Feng Jin out to distribute porridge to the people. The snow continued to fall outside. Several rows of commoners had already lined up in front of the porridge stall. Almost all of them looked haggard and wore thin clothes. Some of the commoners wore rather thick clothes, but they were covered with patches of various sizes. I wonder how many people have been crushed to death by this heavy snow, and how many people have been frozen to death. The manservant at the porridge stall looked at the endless queue and whispered to the manservant beside him. His words were filled with pity and sympathy. Even though 2 large pots had been set up, the porridge was still not enough for the common people. His companion was so busy that his feet didn't even touch the ground. Stop talking nonsense. Work is more important. How can the life of a noble be the same as that of a lowly commoner? Jiang Pingji helped to scoop up the porridge or carry firewood to start the fire. Feng Jin, a weak scholar, was so tired that his forehead was sweating. There was no noise or cue cutting, and the lively audience in the live broadcast room was silent for a long time. The atmosphere was extremely depressing, and some of the audience could not help but feel a lump in their throats. They did not have the courage to continue watching, and no one sent those immoral bullet screens to CG dance. Although we always complain about how cold it is in winter, so cold that we shiver and complain that there is no natural heating in the south and it is very cold in winter. But we are living a happy life now, really, to CG dance. There is no natural heating in this area, but we can buy a heater from Taobao. It can be used to adjust the heat. If you are not afraid of wasting electricity, you can stay indoors in winter and still wear summer clothes. These were almost impossible in ancient times. The rich could wear more clothes and burn high-quality charcoal for warmth, but what about the common people? That's right, where are the commoners? Too many people could not afford to buy clothes to keep out the cold, could not afford to live in a house to block the wind, and could not afford to light a charcoal fire to heat the house. And this was in Shangjing, which was under the feet of the emperor. If this was the case here, what would happen to the surrounding areas of Shangjing? How many houses had collapsed, how many people had been crushed to death, and how many innocent lives had been frozen to death? Without any external conditions, he could only rely on his body to withstand the cold. If he could not withstand it, he would freeze to death. System, can I use popularity points to exchange for food? Warm clothes are fine too. Jiang Pingji secretly asked the system. No, the host's level is too low, unless you choose to level up. The system's cold, mechanical voice fell into Jiang Pingji's ears, and she felt an unprecedented desire to kill. Jiang Pingji secretly calculated the total number of points in her back-end account and asked, I can exchange for food just by leveling up? What's the ratio? The system replied, 10,000 points can be exchanged for 50 kilograms of food. 10,000 points could be exchanged for 50 kilograms of grain? Jiang Pingji now had more than 3 million points. On the surface, it seemed that she could exchange them for a lot of food. However, Jiang Pingji was not someone who was easily fooled. The system didn't answer the first question. Even if it upgraded to level 3, it still didn't have the right to exchange for it. Let's not talk about this. To advance from a level 2 host to a level 3 host, he would need to spend 1 million popularity points. If all of them were exchanged, the remaining popularity points would not be able to be exchanged for much food according to the ratio given by the system. This was a trap. Forget it. I can't rely on you at all, Jiang Pengji replied coldly and turned her head to think of other ways. The system held its breath, but it did not dare to argue with Jiang Pengji. Unless Jiang Pengji chose to use her popularity points to level up, the system could not do anything to the host. The Feng family was one of the few aristocratic families in Shangjing that chose to open a porridge stall. They cooked porridge from day to night, but it was still in short supply. A bowl of porridge was not sticky, but it could at least fill one's stomach and warm up one's cold body. Jiang Pengji helped at the porridge stall for a few days, but she still did not hear any orders for disaster relief, let alone rice and winter clothing for disaster relief. Lu Shi returned from the morning assembly, and he looked more and more tired. He said with a gloomy face, "I've written to the emperor many times, but the emperor always used the second prince's wedding as an excuse to evade it several times. Today, he finally relented, but he gave this task to an official with the surname Shi. That person is greedy by nature, and he plucks feathers from every goose that passes by. I don't know how many people will embezzle the 20,000 taels of silver that were allocated, and how much will end up in the hands of the people. Although the world was not really chaotic, how much better was it than chaotic times?" Jiang Pengji had been helping at the porridge stall for the past few days, or distributing winter clothing to the people, so she was the most familiar with the situation of the snow disaster. She snorted coldly. 20,000 taels of silver is not enough, let alone after being exploited and embezzled. What can it do? Lu Shi sighed. I've already secretly purchased a batch of food and sent it north to Shangjing, hoping to slightly alleviate the urgent situation. In the current world, whatever he did would be a drop in the bucket. It was better to solve the hidden problems from the root. After another 3 days, the snow finally stopped. Jiang Pengji looked at the invitation, and her smile was very cold. The second prince is getting married, and I am not related to him. Why would I go there? The vast city of Shangjing was covered in white snow, and the sky and earth were the same color. The princess of the royal family of the northern borderline wore a bright red wedding dress, and with the exception of the Dongqing emperor, she sat in a sedan carried by 16 people. The sedan was decorated with gold, silver, and jade, and hung with red satin, which shone under the sunlight. It was very luxurious. The wedding procession wore festive new clothes, and they entered Shangjing through the gate of the city. They walked around the city, and the people on both sides of the street cheered and gave their blessings. Hundreds of tables were set up next to the prince's palace, and the court officials and noble ladies went in and out. It was very lively. In sharp contrast, in a remote corner of Shangjing, there were stiff corpses that were dug out from the ruins. One by one, the frozen corpses were piled up in cart after cart. Jiang Pengji wore a plain dress, and her long hair was tied up with a wooden hairpin. Her expression was as cold as ice. The way of the world. It was really time for a change. Jiang Pengji ordered the manservant who was cleaning up the corpses, "Bury them well. The weather is cold now, and the corpses will not rot easily, but we can't neglect them because of this. If the corpses are piled up and not dealt with, it will easily become an epidemic when spring comes. Don't worry, Lang Jun. I will do it properly." At the same time, in another place in Shangjing, Lu Zheng was holding a plate and chewing the slightly cold white cake. He sighed and said, "It has been almost a month since the evaluation, and the imperial court still hasn't issued a letter of appointment. I think there is no hope this year. Master has decided to leave for Langyi in 2 days. I really don't want to come back to Shangjing again." Han Yu heard the sound of the wind blowing outside, and he was very annoyed. Many people had frozen or starved to death, and the government still held such a grand wedding for the second prince, which was even bigger than the crown prince's wedding. Chapter 309. Han Yu wasn't in the mood to study because of the noise outside. Lu Zheng, on the other hand, was eating happily. Seeing that Han Yu was still frowning, Lu Zheng's eyes flickered and he asked casually, interrupting Han Yu's thoughts. Where did Zixiao go? I didn't see him this morning and he wasn't reading in the morning either. Han Yu came back to his senses and asked, You didn't see him either? Lu Zheng ate a plate of white cakes and drank a big bowl of hot tea. The coldness in his body evaporated. I didn't see him. This plate of white cakes was his breakfast. He didn't want to eat it because it was cold, so I cooked it and ate it. Lu Zheng patted his chest to calm himself down, then gulped down a big bowl of hot tea. The warm feeling made him feel a little sleepy. Han Yu's mouth twitched, as if he could already imagine Wei Si's embarrassment when he came back and found that his food was gone. Where was Wei Si, whom they were talking about, at the moment? He was wearing a plain scholarly robe and a cloak that barely protected him from the cold. He went to the snow-stricken slums with 2 servants and a cart. Many slums that had been in disrepair for a long time had collapsed, making the already difficult roads extremely rugged. It was not easy for the people to get in and out of the slums. There was no porridge stall nearby, so many families had a hard time making a living. The thin elderly and children could only starve or freeze to death in the freezing weather. Wei Langjun is here. As soon as he arrived at the entrance of the alley, a 7 or 8-year-old girl ran into the alley joyfully. Not long after, more than 20 thin old women or children less than 10 years old came out with bowls in their hands. Wei Si asked the servants to stop the cart and lifted the thick quilt covering the cart. There were 4 big buckets on the cart. Even though they were covered with lids, there was still sweet and fragrant hot air coming out. Don't worry, everyone has a share. Although Wei Si didn't show much of an expression, beautiful people always had some privileges. The people were quite touched that he came to deliver food every day. They had long let down their guard and were not afraid of this fairy-like Langjun. Instead, they liked him very much. Not long after, the 3 large buckets of steamed buns were all distributed, and the large bucket of thick porridge was also emptied. The leftovers were also scraped clean. At this moment, Wei Si realized that the hem of his clothes was being tugged by someone. He looked down and saw that the little girl with an ashen face was staring at him with her clear eyes. Her eyes were filled with admiration. Through those eyes, he seemed to see another child and his heart softened. Squatting down, he looked her in the eye and asked, Have you completed the task I gave you 2 days ago? The girl nodded heavily, and her yellowish face blushed. She answered happily, Yes, everything is done. The houses collapsed, crushing countless people who were sleeping to death. The roads were blocked, cutting off the connection between the people in the slums and the outside world. Wei Si hired the young and strong men from the slum to provide them with 3 meals a day. He also gave them extra wages to clear the rocks and snow on the road. If not for that, the big cart behind them would not have been able to be pushed in. Under the pressure of the snow, more houses would have suffered. The girl in front of him lost her mother in the snow disaster, and her father's leg was broken by a fallen beam. He could not work at all. Losing their only labor force, one could imagine the life of this family of 2. Wei Si smiled and gave her a task. He asked her to remember the people who cleared the snow and rocks. He paid her daily wages and gave her warm clothes. The child was very concerned about this and did it very seriously. Very well done, he praised. The child smiled and opened her mouth, revealing her gums that were missing a few teeth. She seemed to realize that this was not good, so she shyly closed her mouth. Wei Si asked the servants to settle the wages for the day, and asked them to move a few bags of food from the cart, leaving some food for each family. I won't be coming in 2 days. There are still some food and money here. Keep it for everyone. Wei Si's family was considered to be in decline, but a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Before the Wei family moved, they left him a lot of money, enough for him to live a life without worries. It was just that he followed Master Yuanjing to the capital for the assessment. At first, he did not expect to encounter such a thing, so he did not bring much with him. Thank you, benefactor, for your great kindness. The crowd expressed their gratitude. Some of the elderly even wanted to kneel down, but they were all stopped by Wei Si. After leaving the slum, Wei Si sighed with worry. personal strength was always weak. Even if he spent all his wealth, what could he do? The guest house that Wei Ci stayed in was not close to the second prince's residence, but if he wanted to go back, he had to pass by there. The further away from the slum, the neater and more luxurious the surrounding houses were. The road under his feet also changed from a muddy dirt road to a neat stone road. It was hard to imagine that such a slum and the courtyard house in front of him would be in the same area. Seeing that there was a majestic guard of honor in front of him, he asked the servant to stop the cart at the side and make way for them. Langjun, the second prince's residence, is on the street ahead. Do you want to make a detour? The servant pushed the cart and asked anxiously. 100 tables of banquets occupied the entire street. Ordinary people were not even allowed to go near, and even the servants could not enter. Let's make a detour, lest we offend the nobles and cause unnecessary trouble. Wei Ci lowered his eyes and tightened the two sides of his cloak. He frowned, leaving some wrinkles. The second prince's residence was originally the property of a high-ranking official in Shangjing. Later, it was confiscated, and the government gave this area to the second prince. The residence was expanded and renovated. Almost the entire street was within the scope of the second prince's residence, so it would take a lot of time to make a detour. From afar, Wei Ci saw the corner door of the second prince's residence open, and buckets of swill were transported to the swill cart. After a long while, the buckets of swill were moved, and the vermilion corner door was quietly closed. From afar, Wei Ci heard the servants who were transporting the swill whispering to each other. "Sai, how is this swill? It's obviously buckets of silver. I look at those dishes, they're neat and tidy. Some of them have only been moved a few times, and some of them haven't even been touched. They're just poured into the buckets of swill like garbage. Outside, I don't know how many people are starving to death. Even if these can't be finished and thrown to those people to eat, many people can still be saved." The other cook said, "Do you want to die? What nonsense are you spouting here? If the nobles hear this, it's a small matter if you lose your job. I'm afraid you might even lose your life. What right do those lowly people outside have to eat what the nobles have eaten? Otherwise, why do they say that people have a golden spoon in their mouths and are born noble, while we are the peasants in the fields, born to be trampled upon? You still have the cheek to talk about me, aren't you also not careful with your words?" The two cooks bickered for a while, then sighed and quietly drove the carriage away from the back door of the residence. When Wei Ci heard this, he felt as if he was in an icehouse, and cold air rushed from the soles of his feet to his brain. A pair of mocking eyes flashed before his eyes, causing his heart to tighten. "Your Majesty, you're right." Chapter 310. Lu Shi and Jiang Pingji stayed at the Feng residence for a long time, but all good things must come to an end. Time passed, and it was time for the two families to part ways. "Lanting, you have to be careful in Langyi Academy. Think before you act. Don't be impulsive." Feng Jin thought of Jiang Pingji's gender and wanted to sigh more than once. If his good friend was a man, things would be much easier. Unfortunately, she was a woman and was naturally restricted by her gender. Feng Jin felt it was a pity. "I know. Do I look like the kind of person who causes trouble?" Jiang Pingji said innocently. Feng Jin was silent for a while and said bluntly, "You do." Su Ku, who was standing at the side, almost laughed out loud. He was liking this Feng Langjun more and more. He was straightforward and honest. Jiang Pingji glanced at Su Ku unhappily. "You're helping others." Hui Jun was handed over to Lu Shi. He would send someone to teach her various skills and familiarize her with the rules and etiquette. Lu Shi had already received his appointment letter in Chongzhou. He would be leaving soon, so Jiang Pingji could not go with him. Therefore, before leaving, Lu Shi brought a generous gift to Master Yuanjing and asked him to take care of Jiang Pingji. She was going to study, not to enjoy life. Therefore, there were only two people going with Jiang Pingji to Langyi. One was Takshu, and the other was Su Ku. As for the servants who would take care of her, they could wait until they reached Langya and find someone to arrange them for them. "I've always trusted you. You don't have to force yourself to study in Langyi." Lu Shi looked at his daughter who was growing up. He was filled with emotions. Master Yuanjing is talented. You have to learn from him. If you don't understand, ask. Don't feel troubled or embarrassed. If there are any inconveniences in life, send someone to send a letter to me. Don't make yourself suffer. Lu Shi was not a pretentious person, but looking at his daughter, he felt a little worried. He only had one child. Ah Min's bloodline in this world was only this one. No matter how Lu Shi nagged, Jiang Pingji agreed obediently. The next day, after saying goodbye to Feng Ren, his wife, and Feng Jin, Jiang Pingji sat in the carriage. The coachman gently waved the whip and the wheels turned. Lu Shi also boarded the carriage. His entourage was much larger than Jiang Pingji's. There were more than 100 guards on both sides of the carriage. Nowadays, Chongzhou was not stable. They did not know what dangers they would encounter on the road. Bringing more people would increase their safety. As for Jiang Pingji, she could take on a group of people by herself, so she didn't need anyone's protection. That was why she rejected Lu Shi's proposal to assign guards to her. Jiang Pingji suppressed her unnecessary emotions and glanced at the Feng residence where she had been staying for a long time. She lowered the curtain of the carriage and her expression returned to its usual indifference. He leaned against the table and read for a while. When he got bored, he looked up at the bullet screen to kill time. The audience in the streaming room was also affected by the snow disaster some time ago. They were not in a good mood. Most of the bullet screens were greetings, and there was very little content about showing off. Jiang Pingji flipped through the comments page after page, and her lips curled into a sneer. If she was in a bad mood, the system would not be any better. System, I suddenly thought of something. Don't you think there's something strange about the live stream? The roads in the wealthy district of Shangjing were very smooth. Coupled with the powerful shock absorption system of the Lu residence, she almost did not feel the vibration when she sat in the carriage. Ever since the system parted with Jiang Pingji on bad terms, it had not made a sound for a few days. Now that Jiang Pingji took the initiative to talk to it, it felt a little anxious. It felt that it was not a good thing. What's missing? The system asked her. Jiang Pingji looked like she did not care. She flipped through the bullet screen records day after day, starting from today. Because she had a super strong memory, her reading speed was abnormally fast. She looked through the records faster than flipping through a book. I remember you once told me that your full name is Multidimensional Palace Intrigue Streaming System. Not to mention the recent era in the streaming room, even in my interstellar era, the theory of planes has always been one of the scientific research goals pursued by scientists. Jiang Pingji said coldly, but the system's heart skipped a beat. It did not dare to make a sound. It wished it could erase its own existence. If a streaming platform suddenly pops up in the dimension I'm in, and it's proven to be real. Jiang Pingji tilted her head, and the sneer at the corner of her lips made the system shudder. Do you think that a normal government machine or a big force with a certain amount of power would really be indifferent to this? But I've looked through the bullet screen records for so long, and I don't seem to find anything unusual. Jiang Pingji said it lightly, but it was tantamount to a clap of thunder in the ears of the system. After she intimidated the system, she sighed and said, "Can you explain why?" She had always been highly suspicious and wary of the system. But because the system was not worthy of her trust. It had too many tricks up its sleeves. She would be a fool to believe it. If she had not tested it several times and confirmed that the audience in the streaming room was real, and that it was indeed connected to another plane, she would have suspected that the audience was fake. The so-called multidimensional streaming system was just an illusion that the system had created by itself. The plane was real, but a very important part of the bullet screen was missing. Jiang Pingji could not help but suspect that the system was manipulating things behind the scenes. Any bullet screen that involved the official forces of that plane had been secretly cleared by the system. In other words, those people were not qualified to enter the streaming room at all, let alone post bullet screen content. What was the system trying to do? After a long time, Jiang Pingji thought that the system was going to pretend to be deaf and mute. The other party gave an explanation. The streamer's streaming level is too low, so she does not have the authority in this area. In addition, the theme of the streaming room is palace intrigue. Your task is only to stream how to fight in the palace intrigue, and how to turn a noble lady from an aristocratic family into an empress who rules the world. Therefore, you need an interested audience, not a group of opportunists with ulterior motives. As a system, you must strictly control the situation and ensure that the streaming is watchable. The system replied coldly. It added, as a system, my responsibility is to guide the streamer on the right path. Any content that has nothing to do with the main plot and elements that affect the viewing of the streaming room must be removed. Therefore, the official forces of that plane cannot enter the streaming room, let alone post content that is misleading to the streamer. Regarding this point, you can carefully look at the streaming agreement that you signed at the beginning. The system was businesslike and followed the rules and regulations. She could not say anything about it. Jiang Pingji secretly clicked her tongue. Anyway, there was only one system. Whether it was black or white, it could make up whatever it wanted. No matter what the other party said, she did not believe a single word it said. Jiang Pingji snorted and said, "That's fine. Anyway, I don't like to deal with unfamiliar forces." She had full control over her own life, and no one could interfere with it. Hearing her say that, the system secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Chapter 311. Wei Ci looked at Jiang Pingji in a daze, his mind full of thoughts. The person in front of him was definitely at the top of the list of people he was most afraid of seeing. The scene he saw the day before was still echoing in his mind. He could not calm down no matter what he did. He would always wake up from his nightmares at midnight, sweating profusely. Yesterday, he tossed and turned restlessly, unable to fall asleep. He did not have much appetite in the morning, so he only ate some white cake. Coupled with the dark circles under his eyes, people who did not know would think that the white cake was unpalatable. Lu Zheng could usually eat 2 more bowls of rice when he looked at Wei Ci's face, but he had no appetite today. Before he could complain, Master Yuan Jing, who had squinted his eyes and moved closer to the bamboo slip, suddenly spoke. "Zixiao, there is a distinguished guest at the door. Go out and receive her." Wei Ci did not understand, but looking at Master Yuan Jing's slightly squinted eyes, his heart could not help but skip a beat. He had an ominous premonition. He muttered to himself. When he saw Jiang Pingji get out of the carriage, he felt a slight stomachache, as if the white cake he had just eaten was rolling in his stomach. Jiang Pingji stepped forward, seemingly not noticing Wei Ci's strange expression, and greeted him. "Zixiao, we will be classmates in the future. If I have done anything wrong in the past, I hope that Zixiao will forgive me on account of she's young age. I am not very good with words, and people often misunderstand me. I hope Zixiao will not alienate me because of this." Wei Ci nodded, not daring to speak more. He did not believe the humble words of the person in front of him. She was used to being willful and reckless, doing whatever she wanted to do. If she said, "I am not very good with words, hit me if you don't like it," or something like that, he would believe her. Anyway, he could not beat her. Jiang Pingji did not care about his attitude. She raised her hand and untied the rope of the cloak. Wei Ci saw this and subconsciously took a step back. Both of them were silent at the same time. Jiang Pingji thought of something and smiled innocently. She handed the cloak to Takshu, who followed behind her. She did not miss Wei Ci's slightly relieved expression. When she passed by him, she whispered something. "That day, I lent the cloak to Zixiao to ward off the cold. Although it is not worth much, it is one of she's favorites." Jiang Pingji lied through her teeth. Wei Ci seemed to be facing a formidable enemy. She smiled softly and said, "I wonder if I can go to Zixiao's room to get." Before she could finish her sentence, Wei Ci seemed to explode. He took a step forward and walked quickly, looking as if he had been frightened. Jiang Pingji shrugged her shoulders as she faced Takshu and Suku, who looked like they had seen a ghost. She looked exactly like a local ruffian. Suku was dumbfounded. He couldn't believe that the person who had flirted with him was actually his Lang Jun. "Since when did you have the hobby of being gay?" As if she could read his thoughts, Jiang Pengji said, "You're not as good-looking as him. Why are you so worried?" Su Ku, should he be happy that he was safe, or sad that his face was picked on? Takshu, on the other hand, was stunned at first, but she quickly regained her composure. She raised her hand to cover her lips, giggling as she teased. "Our Lang Jun has grown up. When spring came, she would be 13 years old. In this era, those who were engaged would have gotten married, and those who were not would have gotten engaged." Su Ku secretly rolled his eyes. Jiang Pengji said meaningfully, "Yes, he's grown up." After greeting Master Yuanjing, Jiang Pengji was considered a student of Langyi Academy. She could study in the academy in the future. "Who's this?" Master Yuanjing smiled kindly. His gaze moved from Jiang Pengji to Su Ku. "His name is Su Ku. He's my study companion." Su Ku was very nervous. He was like a prisoner waiting for his trial. He was nervous and uneasy. He was afraid that Master Yuanjing would be unhappy with him. "He's a good seedling. He can be a great talent. Get up, all of you." Master Yuanjing was like a kind elder. He made people feel close to him. "Lanting, have you had your breakfast? Do you want to have some with me?" There were 2 plates of white cakes on Master Yuanjing's table. There was a teapot next to him that was boiling hot tea. There was a sweet smell in the air. Su Ku was stunned. He never thought that Master Yuanjing, who was famous in the 9 prefectures, would be so down-to-earth. Normally, when Master Yuanjing invited someone, even if they had eaten, they would have to say that they had not. However, Jiang Pengji did not play by the rules. She spoke bluntly. "I've eaten." Master Yuanjing did not expose Jiang Pengji's lie. He turned to Su Ku and asked, "Have you eaten too?" Su Ku was still confused. He shook his head. He did not know why Master Yuanjing dragged him to eat white cakes. White cakes were a common breakfast in Langyi. However, Master Yuanjing had a unique taste. He ate white cakes with fragrant tea. There were many spices in the fragrant tea. It tasted weird, but the white cakes were dipped in honey. In short, this way of eating was like dipping lychees in soy sauce. Jiang Pengji politely declined. Su Ku was quite happy at first. After eating, his stomach felt uncomfortable. Jiang Pengji had expected it. She looked at Su Ku's bitter expression as if she was watching a show. "I told you to eat whatever you want. Have you learned your lesson?" She had a sharp sense of smell. After analyzing the spices in the pot of tea, she knew to stay away from it. However, Su Ku went to it. "How did I know?" Master's tea brewing skills are so, he did not know what words to use to describe it. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, "Master Yuanjing's tea brewing skills are not a problem. However, an old man has a heavy taste. His stomach is not good, so the tea he makes is naturally better for digestion. You were born in Zisong County. The food there is more bland. Naturally, you can't stand it." Su Ku smacked his lips. There seemed to be an indescribable, strange taste left in his mouth. Although he was flattered to have breakfast with his idol, it was better to eat less of such dark cuisine. Jiang Pengji said, "Help me pack up. Master Yuanjing and the rest will leave for Langyi this afternoon." "So soon?" Su Ku was stunned. He thought he could rest for a day or 2 at the guest house. "Not soon. They have been delayed in Shangjing for a long time." Jiang Pengji shook her head in disappointment and said, "In the morning, my father told me that the imperial court has no time to arrange a place for the scholars. They are to return to their hometown and wait for the decree." The reason was very ready-made. They were busy building relationships with the northern borderline and the marriage of the second prince. How could they care about other trivial matters? What they did not know was that most of the scholars were arrogant people. They were so ambitious that they were given the cold shoulder. They probably did not want to enter the imperial court to be an official. Not everyone liked the intrigue in the officialdom. Instead of fighting in the officialdom, it was better to be a famous scholar and still be famous. A slightly familiar-looking young man walked through the corridor and came to the hall. He bowed to Master Yuanjing. "Master, the carriage and dry food are ready." Chapter 312. Meng Hang, the eldest son of Meng Zhan, the county chief of Meng County in Song Prefecture, and the son of Lu Shi's second wife, Gu Zhen. He is now facing the danger of being assassinated. Please accept him. If the mission is completed, the host will be rewarded with a big mystery bag. If the mission is failed, the host will receive a level 1 electric shock as punishment. Jiang Pengji closed her eyes and leaned against the table. She seemed to be taking a nap, but she heard the system's synthesized voice. Mengheng? She frowned, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. Big mystery package? The system coughed softly and said, yes, this is the characteristic of real-time triggered missions. It's similar to a gold chest, and the probability of getting something good is very high. I hope that the host can consider this mission. After all, it has been a while since you started a live broadcast mission, so the rewards are limited. As long as we accept Meng Hang and bring him along for a while, it will be considered a success. Jiang Pengji snorted coldly and said, System, you seem to have forgotten. I'm not in charge of the team here, and it's not up to me to decide whether or not we can accept one more person. Although there were many people in the caravan, most of them were frail scholars. If the mastermind really wants to kill Meng Hang, it will definitely bring danger to the convoy. Even if one person is accidentally injured, it will be a great loss. You want me to bet on it? The system was speechless. It tried to persuade Jiang Pengji, but it swallowed the words that were on the tip of its tongue. This host was not someone who could be easily fooled. It knew this very well. In that case, the host can choose to give up the mission. Even if you fail, the punishment is only a level 1 electric shock, which won't affect the host much. However, from the perspective of a system, it would be better for you to accept this mission. After all, Meng Hang is not only Meng Zhan's son, but also the only remaining descendant of your aunt Gu Zhen. He is your cousin. Jiang Pengji pondered for a long time and asked, if I don't intervene, what are the chances of something happening to Meng Hang? The system replied, I've looked at the probability. It's 9 out of 10. Jiang Pengji glanced at the big mystery bag on the mission panel with an odd expression. Don't bother me. I'll think about it. The system said in a businesslike manner, all right, I won't disturb you. She did not seem to have any change on the surface, but she was secretly sneering in her heart. In the end, the system could not hold it in any longer. Jiang Pengji was in no hurry to upgrade the streaming room. She had said earlier that the leveling up of the live stream depended on the upgrade card. If she could not get an upgrade card, she would not level up. It had been more than half a year, and she had been saving up her popularity points like a miser. No matter what the system said, she was unmoved. Why was she like this? Because she had already seen through the system's little tricks. So what if it was a system? To put it bluntly, it was just a bunch of data that thought it was clever. Did it think it could fool a living person like her? Dream on. After a few confrontations, the system did not gain the upper hand. Instead, Jiang Pengji found out more about the other party and knew what popularity points were. To the system, popularity points were the source of its upgrades and daily activities. Perhaps there were even more important uses. If the live stream room did not level up, the number of points gained daily would not increase. It would be fixed at that point. Unfortunately, the system's appetite was gradually increasing. It was like a 3 or 4 month-old baby growing into a 1 or 2-year-old child. In the past, he only needed a few mouthfuls of milk to fill his stomach. Now, he needed a small bowl of muddled paste. Under such circumstances, the upper limit of the number of people in the live broadcast room had to be increased. Only then would the daily popularity points be able to satisfy the system's appetite. How to increase the maximum number of people? There were only 2 ways. One was to use the upgrade card, the other was to pay for the upgrade from the streamer's own pocket. The system claimed that for the sake of the streamer, a small investment would yield a big return. When the upper limit of the number of people increased, the streamer would receive more benefits. However, was Jiang Pengji such a stupid person? If the system was hungry, then let it be hungry. It had nothing to do with her. More importantly, Jiang Pengji suspected that the upgrade of the streaming room did not require that many popularity points. Who knew how much commission the system had received from it? Jiang Pingji could not be bothered to believe a single word the system said. Her solution was to drag it out. Drag it out until the system could not take it anymore and urgently needed more popularity points. Then it would pay for Jiang Pingji's upgrade. In fact, that was how the first upgrade card came about. She dared to bet that the real-time triggered task was meaningless. It was just an excuse for the system to give Jiang Pingji the upgrade card. If she opened the so-called big mystery package, there would definitely be a upgrade card. Ever since Jiang Pingji knew that the system could read her mind, she divided her consciousness into two. She fooled the system with her superficial psychological activities, and her deeper consciousness was her real intention. Well, she concluded that it did not matter whether she completed the task or not. I'll accept it. Just when the system was feeling uneasy, Jiang Pingji's light words made it cry tears of joy. It was as if it had been granted amnesty. It was rare for the host to be so easy to talk to. Takshu, I'm going to ride the horse for a while. I feel like my waist is going to ache after sitting in the carriage for so long. Jiang Pingji put the hand warmer in her arms in Takshu's arms. She lifted the curtain a little and went out sideways. Soon, the curtain was closed. Lengjun, remember to put on a cloak so that you won't catch a cold. Takshu stuck her head out and handed a cloak to Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji nimbly got on the horse and took the cloak with one hand. She shook her wrist, and the huge cloak covered her body obediently as if it had eyes. Zoodluk, young people are full of vitality and aren't afraid of the cold. It's enviable. Master Yuanjing heard the commotion and lifted the curtain slightly to take a look. He smiled with relief. He held a hand warmer in his hand. He wanted to curl up into a ball, and he looked like he had put on a lot of weight. Zuda smiled as he fiddled with the silver coals in the charcoal basin. He moved it a little further away so that he wouldn't burn anything. You're old but strong now. You're not inferior to a young person. You were playing on the ice with your friends a while ago. I didn't even dare to go down. Zuda smiled and said shyly, if you say that you're old, I'll be the first to disagree. Master Yuanjing could not help but laugh. Your mouth is getting sweeter every day. I feel like I've lost weight because of what you've said. The previous snowfall had just stopped, and now it was snowing again. The cold wind that blew against their faces was like knives, and it hurt their cheeks. Jiang Pingji put on her hood and held the reins with both hands. She urged the horse to run from the back of the group to the front to clear the way. He really can't stay idle. Wei Ci was engrossed in his book when he heard the loud sound of horse hooves. He raised his hand to lift the curtain of the carriage, only to see a white figure speeding past the carriage. The cold wind that was stirred up blew on his face, making him feel a little more cheerful. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.